Clouds in the afternoon, reaching a high of 60. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
Portions of the following show may be pre-recorded.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft, and it happened overnight. As advertised, all of the hostages that were being held by Hamas, all the living hostages, have now been freed. After 738 days, the first step in this 20-point peace plan forged by Trump has been executed. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro, answer line. Really a historic moment in terms of not just ending this brutal 2-year war after the horrific October 7th, 2023 terrorist attack by Hamas, but also with the prospect, because of the regional cooperation and pressure brought to bear that was orchestrated largely by President Trump. Not singularly, but largely. You have people expressing more optimism in something lasting in the Middle East than we have previously enjoyed. Peace lasting longer there than previously thought possible after so much ink and blood has been spilled over the prospect of a two-state solution that most assumed was DOA at this point. And now the prospect of peaceful coexistence has been rebirthed. It doesn't mean it's going to be consummated. It doesn't mean this will be lasting. In fact, as we've talked about over the course of just the last couple of weeks, I'm a bit of a skeptic, and you've heard from guests on this program who are also skeptical because of lived experience and because of an understanding of just exactly who Hamas is, who these radical Islamist terrorist organizations are, and what their penchant is, what their stated objective is. It's difficult not to be skeptical, but nonetheless, President Trump is being generally praised, even among some some unusual places on the left, for what he has accomplished just in terms of getting the hostages free, the 20 living, and those hostages that are deceased, still in Hamas's captivity, will be released as well in the coming days, is the understanding per the agreement, and at least provide the families of the grieving, those who know their, I think there's one woman and one young woman, and otherwise young men are not coming home alive. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro, answer line and text line. Just in terms of some unusual quarters, as I mentioned, I mean, no more unusual than his 2016 adversary. Yeah, Hill Dog, the former Secretary of State. Trump accomplishing what all of the leading lights of the Obama years, 12 years worth of them, including one Hillary Clinton, were unable to accomplish in terms of something that was something that is lasting, that has the prospect of stability in the region. Listen to Hillary. When she made these comments before, when there were overtures made and there were efforts being made all along the way by the Trump administration, it was, if he does this very cynically and, put the bar, raise the bar to an impossible height so that you can say, yeah, nice try. Well,
it's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan and seeing a path forward for what's often called the day after. Most importantly, the conflict hopefully will end with the ceasefire. The hostages will be returned. And then the very hard work of rebuilding Gaza, of finding the kind of security that Israel and the Palestinians after Hamas deserve to have, moving forward with the other points in the plan to try to create an opportunity for Palestinians to have a better life and for Israel to have greater peace and security. I am very hopeful that we'll be able to see progress. Today's a good start, but we have to keep going from here.
How about that from Hillary Clinton? I mean, the comments from so many on the left are quite interesting. They speak to something, too. Without, if I could just divert for a second without getting into more details as it pertains to this region, and rather speak to something in terms of their caricatures of President Trump and his supporters by extension. The way that Hillary Clinton, and you'll hear from many others, David Brooks, Senator Mark Kelly, Rahm Emanuel, Tim Kaine, the way that you're going to hear them address Trump's accomplishment here belies so much of what they and their fellow travelers have said about Trump over the last decade, doesn't it? You don't treat Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalin the way that they're complimenting Trump if you believe he is in the same company as those individuals. You don't treat somebody who is going to end our democracy but for their interventions with praise in any circumstance, because you want to remind them that this is somebody who is categorically unfit for office, is an ever-present threat to Western civilization, must be blocked, obstructed, opposed at every single turn. And now it's, oh, well, you know, he did a nice job here. That's just not the way you talk about somebody they've otherwise caricatured the way they have, which gives lie to their caricatures and to the idea that any of these people have any integrity. They're stating the obvious because it takes a really special kind of person, like a J.B. Pritzker, to be unwilling to state the obvious in a circumstance like this where the killing has stopped, where hostages are being released to their families, where the killing has stopped on both sides, at least for now. Picking this back up, I thought another message that was particularly salient over the weekend in advance of what happened overnight, which is the release of these hostages, was spot on. And this goes to some who consider themselves conservatives, who were also particularly conspiratorial and antagonistic towards Bibi Netanyahu and Israel in this matter of trying to eradicate Hamas and prevent another 10/7. Coleman Hughes, he friend of the show. You've had him on many times. He's over at the Free Press. Pure joy in the air, quote unquote, is how an Israeli journalist describes the mood in Israel right now. But how could that be? If the Israelis want, above all, genocide and ethnic cleansing, then why would they celebrate a deal that ends the war with no ethnic cleansing and 97% of the Gazans alive? Pure joy, quote unquote, is not what you feel when your deepest ambitions have just been thwarted. It's almost as if the goal of the war really was to get the hostages back and oust Hamas. It's almost as if Israelis are motivated by a deep, dark desire to live in peace with their neighbors. Yeah, it is almost like that, isn't it? The caricatures of Israel, of Netanyahu, of their ambitions. Yeah, that also has been disproven by events on the ground, hasn't it? Michael, Southside, you're on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Dan, good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I'm happy that Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire, but I've got some unease about the deal. Israel had to trade 2,000 prisoners for 48 hostages. So I kind of feel like Hamas got the better of the deal.
Yeah, I that's a fair point to raise, Michael. Thanks for the call. None of those prisoners, as we discussed last week, were involved in 10/7, but it doesn't mean that Hamas will not quickly return to its old habits, and those 2,000 released will not end up committing atrocities as well, because Hamas is in the business of committing atrocities. It's a risk. It's a concern. In these deals, it's rarely one for one. So these are difficult choices, and this is how you forge a peace. You accept things that you otherwise would be disinclined to accept for the greater good and for this opportunity. And I think if this was just a deal between Israel and Hamas, we would say, yeah, you're probably right. But I think that because you have this sort of regional pressure that has been brought to bear, we'll talk about this a little bit later in the program with Stephen Bucci too, but there was a good piece in the Journal over the weekend about the pressure that was brought to bear among the Arab nations to compel Hamas to accept a deal they were otherwise disinclined to accept. And so now comes the difficulty of trying to erect a governing structure in that region that does not include Hamas or any other terrorist elements, Islamist terrorist elements, and will deal in good faith with both Israel and her neighbors when it comes to peaceful coexistence. I mean, so look, this is no one should be Pollyannish about this. This is very much still in doubt in terms of how this proceeds in the medium to long term. But nonetheless, sort of pure joy in the air, and you see the celebrations on both sides. You see the former Gazan residents pilgrimaging back to Gaza. If you've seen some of the video as they're traversing that seaside roadway to get back to where they used to live and see what, if anything, is left and ostensibly begin the rebuilding. And even the rebuilding piece of it is complicated. And who is going to put in what to get that done, under what conditions. So this is why it's a 20-point plan. It's not a one-point plan. You release the hostages, we release 2,000 prisoners, we call it a day. That's not what this is. This is an effort for something comprehensive and lasting. And it may fail, but how can you at least not make the effort? How can you at least not pursue that when you create the opportunity for it? And that's what Trump has done here. And he does deserve credit. Dare I say, the Nobel Peace Prize. We'll get to that a little bit later. Coming up at 5:38, we'll turn our attention to the indictment of Tish James and the larger language of lawfare. That's at 5:38. Now we check the headlines.
Good morning. It is 48 degrees in Chicago on AM 560 The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. Governor J.B. Pritzker is sounding the alarm on President Trump's deployment of troops and ICE agents here in Chicago, saying it's unnecessary. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons was on Fox's The Big Weekend Show, accusing the governor of putting ICE agents at risk by not taking the situation seriously.
Every day it seems like we're getting officers rammed, attacked, spit on. It's not a laughing matter. And unfortunately, the more that elected officials don't take this situation serious and don't take the violence against ICE officers serious, it's only going to get worse.
This comes after Thursday's ruling from a federal judge that has put a hold on the president's deployment of National Guard troops here in Chicago. And I-57 was closed early yesterday morning after a pedestrian was run over by a vehicle. Officials say southbound I-57 was closed with traffic directed to exit at 111th Street. The victim has not yet been identified. This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next.
Get your tickets for Freedom Summit Chicago 2025, happening on Saturday, November 8th at Westin Chicago Northwest in Itasca. This year, featuring Dr. Ben Carson, Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, along with Dan Proft, Sean Thompson, John Anthony, and many more. This event will sell out fast, so get your tickets today at freedomsummitchicago.com. That's freedomsummitchicago.com. Sponsored in part by Nauman and Associates, Scott Tucker Solutions Incorporated, and by Catholic Cemeteries of Chicago.
I'm not going to
tell you what to do with your money. You're an adult, right? But you should know, gold has increased over 80% in the past 2 years. Yeah, 80%. So if you think stuffing money under your mattress or riding the roller coaster of Wall Street is your retirement plan, well, I wouldn't want to be banking on that strategy. It's time to diversify your savings and retirement assets into physical metals like gold and silver. That's where Advantage Gold comes in. When you call 800-741-GOLD, we'll send you a free gold kit that explains how rolling over your IRA or 401k into gold could not only supercharge your retirement, but maybe even help preserve your sanity. And let's be real, when's the last time you ever heard someone say, "Hey, sell all your gold"? Exactly. Never. The number's simple, 800-741-4653. And if you can spell, even better, that's 800-741-GOLD. Always consult with your financial advisor before investing. Call 800-741-GOLD.
Did you know that AM 560 Radio has a full-service digital marketing division called Salem Surround? If you're a business decision maker, listen up. AM 560 listeners are everywhere your potential audience is. So are our incredible targeting capabilities. We localize digital marketing and put it within reach of every business, small and large, in Chicagoland and beyond. Salem Surround offers AI-powered marketing solutions that reach your ideal audience. Whether or not you tap into the proven live, local, and emotional connection that AM 560 Radio brings, Salem Surround offers a total marketing solution to our partners. All-in-one digital solutions that provide targeted local digital and social media ads, Google AdWords management, website services, video strategy, search optimization, and even a management dashboard to offer you total campaign updates and transparency. Your Salem Surround representative is located right here in Chicago. Experience the Salem Surround digital revolution today. Call 847-472-8951. That's 847-472-8951.
Protect your liver and give it the support it deserves with Active Liver from New Nordic. Find Active Liver in stores at your local CVS, Meijer Grocery, or online at Amazon or at newnordicusa.com.
Now, your official weather forecast.
Today will bring variable cloudiness with a high of 74. Tonight, expect mostly cloudy skies with a low of 58. Tomorrow will also be mostly cloudy with a high of 69. By Wednesday, we'll see cloudy skies in the morning, giving way to times of sun and clouds in the afternoon with a high of 63. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. We were just celebrating the release of all of the living hostages held by Hamas. That happened overnight while you were sleeping. All 20 living hostages have now been released after 738 days in captivity. The first step in the process, if you will, the peace process in the region is being implemented. And the reviews were coming in all weekend in anticipation of this. And many from the left were quite complimentary of Trump, which is, of course, against their nature. And so before we get to, just in the event we don't get to all of this, you really need to hear this. And I'm afraid we won't get to all of it later in the program with Stephen Bucci. We'll have a lot to cover then. You really need to hear some of what was said because it speaks to those who are saying something, those who are saying nothing or trying to misdirect attention away from this momentous occurrence and onto other more pedestrian matters or cheap criticisms of President Trump. They just cannot bring themselves for political reasons. Now, I will concede the point that many of these leftists are also offering compliments for political reasons. But some are, there's always a political component to the calculation. But, some do represent a ever so dim glimmer of hope that the reasoned among us, even if some operate from a reasonable framework more often than others, the reasoned among us can come together, at least from time to time, to acknowledge the reality on the ground and respond accordingly. So it is telling, It's telling who is saying what in these moments. And just on the matter of the Nobel Prize, which is a little bit overwrought because the Nobel Prize that was awarded to the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, is, retrospective. The Nobel Prize isn't for something that happened in the last 2 weeks or 6 months. It's for looking at 2024 with an eye towards, the complete record. And Maria Corina Machado has been leading the opposition against tyranny in Venezuela for a couple of decades. But so it was interesting to note what she had to say upon receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her promotion of liberty in Venezuela against the forces of tyranny.
And they decided to dedicate it to President Trump because he deserves it. Because not only has he been involved in only a few months in solving 8 wars, but his actions have been decisive to have Venezuela now at a threshold of freedom after 26 years of tyranny that have destroyed the lives of millions of Venezuela, destabilized the region, and undermined the institutions in the United States, because having Venezuela as a safe haven of the enemies of the United States and using our territory and our resources to hurt the American people and American institutions is certainly a threat to the national security of the United States and the security of the hemisphere. But President Trump has been very clear, courageous in terms of dismantling this criminal structure. And on behalf of the Venezuelan people, I reaffirmed our gratitude and our commitment to this cause for the whole America. So I insist he deserves it.
It's quite a development. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro answer line. It is the rare tyrant, autocrat, a threat to democracy, dictator. Pick a caricature, your favorite caricature, the lefts of Trump I'm talking about. The rare person who fits that description, who always winds up on the side of peacemaking and supporting those who are also attempting to advance the flags of freedom and peace. Isn't that interesting? From the international arena in war-torn areas or in areas where there is conflict, Trump is always, when Trump insinuates himself, it is always in the direction of reducing the hostilities, of trying to forge some sort of compromise that allows both sides to live in peace, to live with one another. And domestically, it's the same thing. When you use the resources at your disposal to interdict crime, whether it is at the hands of people that were invited and imported by the Biden administration, or it's indigenous crime, and you have situations, say, in big city America, say, I don't know, places like Chicago, where the political power structure is not interested in enforcing the law and providing for equal protection under the law, which is a 14th Amendment violation. Then you use your resources as president under the law to try to increase peace on the streets of Chicago or Memphis or D.C., or San Francisco, as Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, now is calling on Trump to do. Mark Benioff, the leftist. Big corporate leftist, Mark Benioff. Yeah, sure. We don't have enough cops, so if deploying the National Guard in the streets of San Francisco reduces crime, improves safety, I'm all for it. That's what he said. Well, interesting. Some of those that still, again, have some capacity for reason on the left, even if they have spent most of the last decade with terrible cases of TDS, that are coming to when it comes to their immediate interests, like safety. You have these pockets. It's encouraging, actually. I want to be properly jaundiced, but I also want to be encouraged by it. You got to give people room to come over, even if it's only for a short time on a particular matter. But going back to Trump, peace in the international arena, whether it's between Cambodia and Thailand, or Armenia and Azerbaijan, or India and Pakistan, or Iran and Israel, or Israel and Hamas. Every time this guy pops up, there's a movement in the direction of peace and stability. Isn't that interesting? Look at D.C. pre- and post-National Guard. Listen to what the residents are saying. Listen to what the residents of Memphis are saying. Listen to what some residents of Chicago are saying, not all. But you can catch them, not in the Chicago Political Press Corps, obviously, because they're the Pritzker, the BJJB comm shop. But if you're here, watch and view what actual residents are saying on social media, it's a bit of a different story. College campuses. No-go zones for Jewish students being attacked. A Chicago-born leftist who travels to D.C. to assassinate two staffers, two Israeli embassy staffers. What did Trump do? He brings the hammer on those college campuses. You're not going to operate this way. These are violations under all sorts of federal laws, and the money that's tied to it, you're not going to receive it, and you are going to do something about the hate and, in some cases, violence that is being fomented on campus. And that brought pressure to, I don't know, some boards of trustees in Ivy Leagues that saw some Ivy League presidents go the way of the dodo bird. Michael Schill at Northwestern. In part that, in part his handling of the Pat Fitzgerald situation. But the point is this. Whereas the left, people like Pritzker, tolerated, said nothing about anti-Semitism on the campuses of state schools. Say nothing, I'm talking about Pritzker specifically, say nothing about this momentous accord and the release of hostages held in captivity for 738 days. And the prospect through regional cooperation for something more long-term in terms of peace in that region. The most, arguably the most difficult geopolitical region in the world. I mean, the campuses, the streets of big cities, historical conflicts and hotspots in terms of violence and conflict. And every time Trump intercedes, it's in the direction of providing for the physical safety of all of everybody, and protecting the rights, whether they be rights under the U.S. Constitution or in the global arena, rights under natural law, providing for the rights of people who want to live in peace. Isn't that interesting? This development in the Middle East is not a one-off either. And that needs to be looked at. Just as we're looking at the deal in context, we need to look at Trump in this context and use this opportunity, particularly with all of those on the left feeling compelled to admit reality, that, admit the entirety of the reality. That, as Trump said in his Truth Social post last week, on the cusp of the first phase of this deal being implemented, blessed are the peacemakers. And it's clear that he aims to be one. And anybody who says otherwise just doesn't want to look at any of the evidence that I just, generally ran through. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro answer line. Jim in LaGrange on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Hey, Dan, good morning. So, you said it before. The left can't say nice things about Trump in this regard, and that's the same reason why they can't give him a Nobel Prize right now. It humanizes him. It makes him not Hitler. It makes him not Pol Pot. It makes him not Stalin. But on the other hand, too, Dan, also remind me why Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize. What did he exactly do? I can't remember. Nothing really comes to mind, so maybe we can compare and contrast that. Thanks. Have a great day.
Yeah, well, thanks for the call, Jim. Well, I mean, the Nobel Peace Prize has long been political. This isn't the first illustration of it, but the Trump-Obama comparison cast the August Nobel Committee in a particularly negative light, doesn't it? comically negative. Obama got the Peace Prize shortly after he was elected. He didn't do anything. It was an award for what they thought he would do. because he was going to bring the world together with a Coke and a smile. They just assume, well, he said so. So, of course, that's what's going to happen. And what did he do? He fomented instability at home and abroad. But it was all on his potential, because that's what we do when we orient ourselves to the left. It's all on his mellifluous rhetoric. That's good enough for us. Give that man a Nobel Peace Prize. The waters shall recede, and the population's joined, and all of that business. There's no red, and there's no blue. Right, and of course he turned out to be what we always knew he was in Chicago, which is a virulent partisan. Always was the Manchurian candidate for the radical left, the flim-flammer face guy. Right. So what did he do? Well, he did nothing prior to receiving the Nobel Peace Prize other than being elected. And he worsened conditions in terms of peace domestically, internationally, after 8 years. But other than that, well-deserved. Just hearing from some more. I keep referencing them. We've heard from Hillary Clinton, but there's so many. Listen to this analysis from David Brooks, often a critic. He pretends to be a Republican, so his rhetoric is a little bit more muted than the hysterics on the left, but not much. Sometimes, he uses characterizations like authoritarian to describe Trump policies. And yet here, he had this to say.
It's impressive what Trump has did. First, he got together with the Saudis and the Qataris in New York during UN Week and came up with his 20-point plan. And then he understood how to deal with Netanyahu. And I should say, in fairness, the Trump administration, both the first term and the second term, has been better on the Middle East than the Obama and Biden administration. There's something about that region he sort of gets. And so the way to do with Biden, the way you do with Netanyahu is you show total support for Israel at the same time you're leaning on them. And so I think that the Biden people, when they were always withdrawing and threatening and saying, don't do that, that made Israel feel insecure. And they had to negotiate from a position of security, and then they could bend. And so he got Bibi to go against his far-right colleagues who wanted to basically annex Gaza. And there is now a separate Gazan territory, and that's an important achievement. The Qataris are an important role. Why is this little country in the center of all this? Partly because they are part of those Gulf states who wanted to make the Middle East a modern place. And so I think they play just tremendously constructive role because they seem to talk to everybody. Will it work? I don't know, but there's no choice. There's no solution. Martin Indyk, who died about a year ago, had a piece in Foreign Affairs called The Strange Revival, I'm summarizing, of the two-state solution. Everybody wants to give up on the two-state solution. There is no alternative to the two-state solution. And so they're just going to have to stumble their way forward. Are they going to get there? Who knows? We've been covering the Middle East for a long time. They don't get there. But it looks a lot better than I thought it would look 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago.
I wouldn't concede the point there's no solution other than a two-state solution. I wouldn't concede that point. I disagree with Brooks there. But that's not commentary you get from David Brooks very often in the direction of this president. Cenk Uygur, who is the host of the Young Turks podcast, very popular podcast on the far left, had this to say.
Going to give a lot of credit here to Donald Trump. And if you're on the left and you're like, oh, he brought home a hostage and cut out Israel, but he's Trump. Boo, I don't want to give him credit. What do you need? So did you not want to bring home a hostage? Did you want to make sure he followed the orders of the Israeli government? I don't know what you want, but I'm a fair person and an honest person. Trump deserves a lot of credit for this deal.
How about Biden's NSA, Jake from the State Department, who is a diplomat in the same way Jake from State Farm is an insurance agent? You remember him. This is what he had to say over the weekend on CNN.
Of course he does. And I give credit to President Trump. I give credit to Witkoff and Kushner and Rubio. These are hard jobs. The President of the United States is the hardest job in the world. And these other jobs, including the job I occupied, are tremendously difficult. And to get to something like today takes a village, and it takes determination and really hard work. And so I, without question, offer credit for that. Now the question is, can we make sure this sticks as we go forward? And
Arizona Senator Mark Kelly.
I think he should get a lot of credit. I mean, this was his deal. He worked this out. He sent Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, over to negotiate this, and it's so far has gone well. Hopefully the hostages get released here. Might not be within 24 hours, but certainly I think by Monday. And that's progress.
That's progress. David Ignatius, Washington Post, one of the regulars on the Unwatchable Morning Joe program. Nevertheless, again, uncontrollably lurched into an insight. That's what we see happening in many quarters on the left.
The deal that President Trump is announcing played a key part in negotiating is a significant change. This war was blocked for 2 years. President Biden, who preceded him, was unable to find a way to stop it. President Trump found that way by being tough on both sides. And he'll take a victory lap for sure over the next few days, but it's deserved. There's no way that I can see that this would have been done without Trump's pressure in the final hours.
Rahm Emanuel, Tiny Dancer. Trump deserves credit. This is Tiny Dancer talking to the New York Times. Trump deserves credit. If you want to get heard on your criticism, you give a compliment, and then you'll be heard loud and clear on your criticism. If all you are is a critic, it's harder to be heard. If all you are is a critic, it's harder to be heard. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be applicable to Chicago politicians. I guess in part that's due to a lack of a functioning opposition party, because that's all we have here in Chicago and Illinois. All you are as a critic, it's harder to be heard. In other words, you should be ignored, because no matter the nature of the evidence, you're just going to recycle your same criticisms. And that's what you see happening in some quarters, many quarters on the left. Many will not give him credit. But it's interesting that there's a divide there, as there is on an increasing number of issues. People that are recognizing, people that consider themselves men and women of the left, that are recognizing that this path that the neo-Marxists who've taken over their party have the party on may not be the path to political power that it looked to be a couple of years ago. Dan Proft, Chicago's Morning Answer.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer. Sign up for the AM 560 Answer Advantage to get early alerts on event ticket sales, special discounts, and contest opportunities. Sign up today at 560theanswer.com/advantage.
Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Huber. During cold and flu season, a nearby cough or sneeze can trigger a familiar dread, that helpless feeling of being defenseless against an invisible viral threat. But what if you could change the narrative? What if you could fortify your body's natural defenses? This is why I developed Virago, the immune enhancement cocktail designed to give your body the upper hand. Virago is more than a supplement. It's a revolutionary liquid formula packed with 23 powerful natural nutraceuticals for rapid absorption. This unique blend is scientifically crafted to help build resilience and keep you protected. Don't just hope for good health. Make it happen with Virago. Virago and Maha, making America healthy again.
Virago. Order your bottle today online at myvirago.com and use coupon code IMMUNE to save 30%. myvirago.com. Coupon code IMMUNE.
Hello, this is Alistair Begg. In September of 2026, I'll be teaching the Bible as we cruise through the Norwegian fjords. I'd love for you to join me. Call 855-565-5519 or visit deeperfaithcruise.com.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank, a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Anthony and John here from Bionic Auto Parts, proud clients of Signature Bank. We deliver high-quality, recycled and remanufactured auto parts to Chicago and Milwaukee. Our mission is simple: provide parts safely, reliably, with great customer satisfaction.
We process over 350 vehicles a month. With big banks, everything took forever. Layers of approvals and endless delays. At Signature Bank, one call got it done. Whether it's lending, deposits, or treasury management, they deliver fast. Signature Bank made us feel like family. That's a partnership we deeply appreciate.
Signature Bank helps local businesses succeed. Want to learn how Signature Bank can help turn your business vision into reality? Call Signature Bank at 773-467-5600 or visit signaturebank.bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Looking for some hope? Listen to Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef on our sister station, AM 1160, Hope for Your Life. Weekday mornings starting at 8.
AM 560.
The Answer.
No one is above the law. Letitia James famously fumed in defense of her persecutions of Donald Trump in New York State. Well, the worm has turned, hasn't it? We'll discuss the indictment of Letitia James for mortgage fraud at 6:06. It is now 6 a.m. on AM 560 WIND Chicago.
This is a Fox News alert. Hamas has released all 20 living hostages. I'm Dave Anthony.
The 20 men were handed over to the International Red Cross in 2 separate groups before being transferred to the Israeli military. Back home after more than 2 years of detention in a war zone. The bodies of 28 hostages who died are still to be handed over. Israel has begun the process of releasing nearly 2,000 prisoners and detainees in return.
That's Fox's Jonathan Savage. This is the first phase of the Trump-brokered ceasefire plan that stopped the war in Gaza.
These monsters take babies as hostages. In response to this barbaric attack on October 7th, Israel did what it had to do.
That's Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the Israeli parliament a few minutes ago.
The price of these victories has been heavy. Nearly 2,000 of Israel's finest were lost, nearly half in battle.
Now, the war in Gaza also left 67,000 Palestinians dead, and Netanyahu was sitting right next to President Trump when he made his speech.
Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House.
And in a few minutes, President Trump will address the Israeli lawmakers in the Knesset. We're told he will say this is a historic dawn of a new Middle East, that peace is not just a hope we can dream about, but a reality we can build upon. And he'll say the focus now is on restoring stability, safety, and economic development for Gaza to give Palestinians the better life their children deserve. It's day 13 of the government shutdown. And Vice President Vance is warning that more federal workers could be fired. The next Senate vote trying to end a Republican-Democrat standoff over new funding will be tomorrow. America's listening to Fox News.
Good morning. It is 48 degrees in Chicago on AM 560 The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. Illinois Democratic Senators Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth paid a visit to the ICE facility in Broadview on Friday afternoon. Paris Schultz has the story.
Illinois' 2 U.S. senators shut out from visiting the inside of the facility. Durbin says he's visited sporadically over the years without incident until the Trump administration took over.
I've never had this kind of stonewalling by any presidential administration. Something's going on in there that they don't want us to see.
Both Durbin and Duckworth laud the federal court temporary restraining order. that says National Guard troops cannot be on active duty in Illinois for at least the next 14 days.
At least 4 people were arrested over the weekend as protests continued outside that building. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle has unveiled a proposed $10 billion budget recommendation for fiscal year 2026. Preckwinkle said the budget does not include layoffs, tax increases, or cuts to essential services. Cook County's budget increased from $5.2 billion in fiscal year 2018 to $9.94 billion in 2025. American marathon runner Connor Matz may have placed 4th overall in yesterday's marathon, but he shattered an American record for the race. Matz finished the Chicago Marathon with a time of 2 hours, 4 minutes, 43 seconds, which smashes an American record that had stood for more than 2 decades. Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda came in first in the men's division, while Ethiopian Hawa Fezgeja was in first for the women's. And the city of Lake Forest has lifted a boil water order following a water main break on Friday. Officials saying lab tests showing that the water is now meeting all public health standards and is safe to drink. News is a service of AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Have you been getting high quotes for dental implants? With medical PPO insurance, it's possible to save 90% off on average. See if you qualify today at AlmostFreeTeeth.com, making smiles great again. A check of the roads is coming up in 2 minutes on AM 560, The Answer.
Mike Gallagher reflects on 2 years of war.
It's a complicated issue. I'm not pretending it's not. I get that it's complicated for some, but ultimately there is a clarity that we all ought to possess, that if Israel put down their arms today, they'd be obliterated. If the Palestinians put down their arms, there would be peace in the Middle East. You know it, and I know it.
The Mike Gallagher Show, weekdays at 9 on AM 560, The Answer.
It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock is here with tips to help protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication on your accounts, report phishing, and update your software on all your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, LifeLock is your best choice. LifeLock not only alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal information, but also fixes identity theft, guaranteed, or your money back. So stay smart, stay safe, and stay protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use the promo code BECK. Terms do apply.
He's coming. Here he goes. Surprise! Your table saw broke. Also, the warranty expired weeks ago, so you need to pay for a new one out of pocket.
At Progressive, we know small business owners don't usually like surprises because they cost you money. But a good surprise that could save you money? Getting a commercial auto quote from Progressive.
Oh, and the replacement part you ordered doesn't fit, so it's completely useless. What a waste.
Surprise yourself. See if you can save in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-575-6745. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS.
Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start.
Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems.
We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau.
You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com
or call 800-575-6745. That's 800-575-6745.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
Taking a look at the roads from the Team Hackberg Traffic Center, I'm Sue Aller. In great shape on the Eden both ways from Lake Cook to Montrose. Inbound is 14 minutes, outbound is 13. The Kennedy inbound from O'Hare to the Burn interchange is 17, but we already have a 15-minute delay on the outbound side. It's 38 minutes. The Eisenhower inbound from Wolf to the Old Post Office is 12 minutes. Outbound looks good at 13. Inbound Stevenson, no major delays from the Tri-State to Lakeshore. 17 minutes inbound, outbound is 16. The Dan Ryan from 95th to the Burn interchange also looks good. Inbound is 12, outbound is 10. Now, we still have some closures for cleanup from yesterday's marathon. In Grant Park, Balboa Drive is shut down both ways between Michigan Avenue and Lakeshore Drive. Columbus Drive also shut down both ways between Roosevelt Road and Ida B. Wells Drive. And Jackson Drive is also closed both ways between Columbus Drive and Lakeshore Drive. This report is a service of AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, but now a check for your forecast from the National National Weather Service.
Today will be partly sunny and pleasant with a high of 70. Tonight, expect partly cloudy skies with a low of 55. Tomorrow will bring a mix of sun and clouds, creating pleasant conditions with a high of 73. Tuesday looks mostly cloudy with a high of 68. Wednesday starts off cloudy, but will transition to a mix of sun and clouds in the afternoon, reaching a high of 60. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Goldilocks, offering smart security systems to homes and businesses. Call Goldilocks at 708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft. The case of Letitia James. The people versus Letitia James. Of course, the New York State Attorney General indicted last week for mortgage fraud. And now comes the lawfare hue and cry from the left, just as it did with the indictment of Jim Comey. All their heroes. Before we get to the sum and substance of the case, can we remember who Letitia James is? The kind of attorney general she is. This is Letitia James on the stump in 2018, campaigning for the office.
I say one name, Donald Trump. That should motivate you.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the
I mean, if that isn't the definition of the show me the man and I'll find you the crime mentality, I don't know what is. Leventi Beria, James. This illegitimate president who sits in the White House, he's not my president. He's an illegitimate president. His days are numbered. His days are numbers. We've got to be ready to mobilize. We've got to get ready to agitate and irritate until victory is won, and more importantly, until Trump is defeated. We will all rise up and resist this man, and ultimately we'll bring him down. Illegitimate president. I'm going to give you, Trump, the same level of respect that you gave President Obama, and that is absolutely no respect at all. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. The days of Trump are numbered. That's, again, a transcript of another commentary that the AG offered while she was campaigning in 2018. Sounds like somebody that would treat a political opponent fairly and squarely under the law, doesn't it? And she was also part of a crowd that would chant lock him up and so on and so forth. And so she turned out that she acted in furtherance of her disposition as a candidate and offered this in defense of this specious case that she brought to essentially destroy Trump's family business. She gets a corrupt local judge to enter in a verdict of $454 million judgment against Trump. And she used this as her defense.
My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law.
Didn't we say at the time, and in so many of these instances, that this was going to boomerang on the no one is above the law people who aren't really serious about no one being above the law because, for starters, they believe themselves to be above the law? Well, here we are. And, cry no tears for Letitia James because she said at the outset of this, when asked about the potential precedent that she's setting and the consequences that could come from this trumped-up persecution.
So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready. We're ready to respond to their attacks. We're ready to respond to any attempts to cut or eliminate any funding to the great state of New York, as the governor outlined. So despite what has happened on the national stage, we will continue to stand tall in the face of injustice, revenge, or retribution.
Okay, well, now you have your chance. Count 1, bank fraud. Count 2, false statements to a financial institution. Get after it, Letitia. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro, answer line. And text line for that matter. It's a sort of a Comey rehash here. Is anyone concerned about the path that this tit for tat, ostensibly tit for tat lawfare takes us down? Trump was unfairly prosecuted by Smith and Bragg and James and Willis, and so the response is to look at those individuals responsible directly or indirectly and make sure their house is completely in order, because if it's not, and there's an opportunity because they've run afoul of the law, then they're going to be prosecuted for running afoul of the law. Does that concern you at all, that it leads us down this path, this never-ending path of using the state to prosecute your political opponents? 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro, answer line. Before you answer that question, consider this. Hakeem Jeffries was on with Matt O'Hays. I can never tell those two apart, on MSNBC. And he was asked about the Tish James indictment. And this is what he had to say. Hakeem Jeffries, in case you don't know, because he's so immaterial, but technically he is the House Minority Leader. He's the leader of the Neo-Marxist Party in the House.
Government open and then going into the normal appropriations process. There was an election.
No, not that one. No, this one.
So there's two things to keep in mind here. First of all, there's accountability for the corruption and the chaos that Donald Trump has unleashed on the American people from the very beginning of his presidency on January 20th that should be tied directly to the Supreme Court and the 6 right-wing justices who basically gave Donald Trump, without justification, blanket immunity. And he's been out of control ever since. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, of course, is the fact that there are so many different corrupt sycophants within the Trump administration, including but not limited to within the Department of Justice. Now, these people don't have immunity. And the reality is the statute of limitations is 5 years, and there will be accountability with the next administration, if not before, when Democrats take back control of the House of Representatives.
Translation, the lawfare will continue. That's what Hakeem Jeffries just telegraphed. If we get the House back, we'll move to impeach him. We have people in his administration that don't have immunity. If we get the White House back, and thus the Department of Justice will prosecute them. So now factor that into your calculus about getting after Comey, James, and anybody else who has legitimate criminal legal exposure. The New York Post opined on this with, basically a very straightforward line of argumentation, which I'm sure many of you listening are thinking, which is reaping what you sow. The New York Post said, "Board, we have no desire to see America descend into banana republic politics where the loser of every election faces prosecution by the winner. By all means, let us avoid an endless cycle of tit-for-tat political show trials, but let no one pretend that it's not obvious who started this in the first place." I think it's pretty obvious who started this in the first place. How we get out of it is another matter altogether. But if you think appeasement is the way that we get out of it, Hakeem Jeffries just disabused you of that notion, didn't he? Corey in Woodlawn, you're on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Hey, thanks for taking the call, Dan. I think that everybody prosecuting Donald Trump should be prosecuted. If you're not squeaky clean, forget about Donald Trump. You prosecute Americans for the same crimes that you're doing. The hypocrisy is hilarious. She's committing mortgage fraud. The other lady, Cook, is committing mortgage fraud. These individuals need to be prosecuted because how many Americans have they prosecuted for mortgage fraud? Thanks, Dan. Thanks
for the call, Corey. Yeah, I mean, you heard one U.S. attorney over the weekend say essentially prosecutions for mortgage fraud, not unusual by U.S. attorneys. This amount, the amount in question that she allegedly, illicitly, the amount for which she illicitly benefited, the difference in the interest rate she would have received if this was treated as an investment property that she was renting out, which seems to be the case as opposed to her primary residence, was about $20,000. And so the argument is, well, usually these are prosecutions for people that are committing fraud on a greater level. Well, okay. Sure. But you put a spotlight on yourself and you say, come and get me. And people look at your conduct, financial and otherwise, and they find that you run afoul of the law. Well, you put a target on your back. Jesse Jackson Jr. said to Patrick Fitzgerald, come and get me. A lot of people get, not a lot of people actually, especially sitting politicians, get prosecuted for campaign finance violations, using campaign dollars for personal expenses like Jesse Jackson Jr. so egregiously and obviously did with his memorabilia collections. How ridiculous. It also made for great headlines, and don't think Patrick Fitzgerald didn't know that, too. Bruce Lee and Michael Jackson memorabilia. It was a great opportunity to humiliate Jesse Jackson Jr., who really did most of the heavy lifting on that score. But, I mean, most times campaign finance violations are fines, not criminal prosecutions that send somebody to jail. I mean, if you're flagrant, then you could rise to that level, as it did with Jesse Jackson Jr. But mostly it doesn't happen. But in that case, it did. So mostly it doesn't happen at this dollar amount. But in this case, it did. But in terms of whether or not, if the allegations are true, she broke the law, and the determination is she broke the law, if it's a $20,000 benefit or a $200,000 benefit, you can argue about the punishment that should be associated, but you can't argue that it's still breaking the law. And that seems to be lost. I mean, it really is interesting to listen to people suggest that because of their political office, they should be insulated from prosecution as opposed to having a higher standard that you apply to people in public office. And by the way, I say this on the day that Mike Madigan is reporting for jail in our fair city. Right? I don't know what happened, but the politicians have really done a Jedi mind trick on a significant portion of the population, such as that elected officials, politicians I'm rooting for to do my bidding against politicians I'm rooting against, somehow don't have to follow the law or are held to a lower standard when it comes to following the law rather than a higher standard because they're in a position of authority. Just more of sort of the convoluted externalities of the current political culture. Lindsey Graham was pressed on the issue on Meet the Press over the weekend. And I know Lindsey Graham is a bit of a sunshine soldier and summer patriot. I get it. But that doesn't mean he's not sometimes useful, as he was here in pushing back against Kristen Welker.
Do you think that crosses a line between the Justice Department being independent from the executive branch?
I think our Justice Department in the hands of Biden crossed every line there is to cross. I think within 3 days of announcing he was going to run for president in 2024, he did that in 2022.
But what about Trump?
He had
Senator, what about
indictments.
Trump? What about
Now, I think the grand jury is going to take care of this, but you didn't care any about this. You didn't care that Letitia James made up charges that no one's ever faced.
But Senator Biden never publicly called for Trump to be indicted.
He had 90. Biden regretted that they didn't do it before the election. Jack Smith surveilled my phone records and 8 other senators. Jack Smith introduced his brief against Trump October the 24th before the 2024 election, violating every protocol just to politicize the election. So this may bother you that people are being held accountable. It doesn't bother me one damn bit.
I got to tell you, it doesn't bother me one damn bit either. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro. Answer line, Kevin, Ogden Dunes, Indiana.
The United States is pretty much the only place in the world where a person can get a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. And since people realize that inflation is omnipresent, there's a huge difference between the rate on a primary residence versus an investment property. You pay way more if you say, yes, I'm buying this to rent it out to people. That's what these people were doing, including Schiff, I understand. They were renting out, and they were getting an artificial enhancement to their profit margin by lying. And you know, you can't get a 30-year fix in Canada. They change it every 5 years based on what the current rate is. You can't get a fixed rate 30-year in the UK or in Australia. And let me tell you, there are places in Europe where you can only lend to buy a house over 5 years. You got to pay off the.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's stay here. Let's stay here. Stay in the United States. Okay. And.
Okay. Well, just the point is, if you lie to get a better rate and you rent the place out, you're breaking the law. It's as simple as that.
Thanks for the call. Right, and that's what needs to be established in court, and she'll have her day in court. And so will Lisa Cook. Because I see the arguments going back and forth. I mean, you know, we don't see all the evidence. You just see the indictment. But that's the burden of proof that the prosecution has to meet in both cases. And we shall see. We do know the federal government has about a 95% conviction rate. So just might want to take that into consideration. But I mean, just my personal experience. I had a place in Chicago, and I bought a place in Florida, and my domicile was in Chicago. And, the rate that I would have gotten on the house I bought in Florida when I first bought it, at least, was a rental property, was an investment property, it would have been a different rate. It would have been about 3/4 to a 1.5 lower had I declared my domicile to be Florida, as opposed to declaring it to be a rental property, an investment property. And, as Kevin was saying, over the course of 30 years or even 15 years, that's real money. And it's real money that you're frauding. Actually, there's a really good piece by Kim Strassel on this in the Wall Street Journal of the weekend. Lessons from Letitia James. Deceptive mortgages contributed to the housing bubble, and she worries that investors are now ignoring some of these red flags. But she talks about the incidence of fraud and what it does to the market. Federal Reserve Bank study in 2023, she writes, found that investors falsely claiming homes as their residence accounted for about 6% of mortgage borrowers during the housing bubble and between 2 and 3% in subsequent years. Fraud was more common in places with greater price appreciation like California, D.C., Florida, and Nevada. Borrowers who misrepresented their occupancy to lenders notably had lower credit scores than honest investors, and such misrepresentation allowed dishonest borrowers to circumvent tighter underwriting guidelines imposed by lenders and obtain lower interest rates. This enabled them to take on more mortgage debt, which fueled higher housing prices. And then when the housing bubble collapsed, fraudulent investors defaulted at more than double the rate of honest ones. That resulted in a bigger crash. So, I mean, there are consequences to allowing scofflaws to just, it's just this much. It's just sort of this level of fraud. But if it's this level of fraud that goes unresponded to in terms of, prosecution under the law so that there is equal justice under the law, I mean, then it can have, it's not the end, it's not a capital crime, but it can create bigger problems down the road, just like any sort of lawlessness that you tolerate. So, I mean, there are this is not like a victimless crime. There are real consequences. And not just to Letitia James in terms of a benefit to her, there's also contributing to the detriment of others who are honest. Dan Proft, Chicago's Morning Answer.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
When the power goes out, life stops. Heat, AC, fridge, phones, all gone. But with a Generac home standby generator from True Power Generator Service, your home powers back on automatically, so you're never left in the dark. Book your consultation today at TruePowerGenerator.com. That's TruePowerGenerator.com. Plus, 560 listeners get a free 10-year extended warranty. Terms and conditions apply. Call for details. True Power Generator Service and Generac. It's not just a generator, it's a power move.
Want to see if you could pay less in taxes? Try the quick and easy tax calculator at willsave.com. Yes, a free tax calculator. That's WILSAVE.com. Calculate how you could keep more of your hard-earned money and give less to Uncle Sam, especially in retirement. Get your free tax analysis today at willsave.com. And don't forget to tune in to Protecting Your Assets with Steve Shyman every Saturday morning at 8, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Business owners, is your company's cybersecurity ready to handle today's cyber attacks? They're getting more and more sophisticated every year. Some companies never recovered due to the fallout. In 2021, a ransomware group called DarkSide gained access to Colonial Pipeline through a compromised password. The impact, $4.4 million paid in ransom. In 2017, Equifax had a massive breach which ended up costing more than $700 million in settlements. Large companies from Target and Yahoo to small businesses, including medical practices, have suffered major losses due to cyber attacks. Many had to close their doors. Access One is here to protect your business 24/7 year after year. Access One, they're a proud sponsor of Chicago's Morning Answer. These are the guys you can count on. Cybersecurity isn't just about IT. It's about protecting your survival and customer trust. If you're concerned about your cybersecurity, get a free baseline cybersecurity assessment from Access One by calling 1-800-804-8333 or fill out the contact form at access1inc.com. By the way, a fascinating 60 Minutes piece on Chinese cyber attacks, small towns, small operations. We'll talk at 7 o'clock hour with Stephen Bucci about that. But just in terms of cyber attacks, if you're not a big boy, you don't think that you're potentially a target, you may want to disabuse yourself of that notion based on the 60 Minutes report and a discussion they had with a 4-star general who is the former head of U.S. Cyber Command. Really interesting. Anyway, back to Access One. Access One is here in Chicago. Again, to get that free assessment, call 1-800-804-8333 to schedule your free baseline cybersecurity assessment, or visit them online at access1, O-N-E, access1inc.com. Access1inc.com is the website.
For decades, Dennis Prager shared his wisdom with listeners around the world through his lectures, courses, interviews, and debates. Now, for the first time, the collective wisdom of Dennis Prager is being made available as a podcast. Listen to Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager, with new episodes released for a limited time only as a podcast. Subscribe for free today at DennisPrager.com. That's Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager, exclusively at DennisPrager.com.
AM 560. The Answer.
Coming up at 6:36, Jimmy Kimmel teams up with Jelly Belly. And Antifa, it's not real. Antifa's not a real thing. 6:36, now we check the headlines.
Good morning. It is 48 degrees in Chicago on AM 560 The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. Protests continue outside the ICE detention facility in Broadview as 2 of our senators were denied access to the building. Fox's William Longinus has more.
Illinois' 2 U.S. senators shut out from visiting the inside of the facility. Durbin says he's visited sporadically over the years without incident.
I've never had this kind of stonewalling by any presidential administration. Something's going on in there that they don't want us to see.
Both Durbin and Duckworth laud the federal court temporary restraining order that says National Guard troops cannot be on active duty in Illinois for at least the next 14 days.
Now, this comes as Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said the Trump administration is looking to buy more facilities here in Chicago. I-57 was closed early yesterday morning after a pedestrian was run over by a vehicle. Officials say southbound I-57 was closed with traffic directed to exit at 111th Street. The victim has not yet been identified. News is a service of AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Have you been getting high quotes for dental implants? With medical PPO insurance, it's possible to save 90% off on average. See if you qualify today at AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Making smiles great again. A check of the roads is coming up in 2 minutes on AM 560, The Answer.
Get your tickets for Freedom Summit Chicago 2025, happening on Saturday, November 8th at Westin Chicago Northwest in Itasca. This year, featuring Dr. Ben Carson, Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, along with Dan Proft, Sean Thompson, John Anthony, and many more. This event will sell out fast, so get your tickets today at freedomsummitchicago.com. That's freedomsummitchicago.com. Sponsored in part by Aid for Women, Breakthrough Ideas, and by attorney Stephen A. Leahy at Opum Tax Advocates. Is the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians the revival of an ancient conflict recorded in the Bible?
The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. So what if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, an enemy people of Israel? The Bible speaks about this whole war as a dragon representing the enemy attacking a woman representing Israel.
Dinesh D'Souza's new film, The Dragon's Prophecy, offers new understanding of October 7th, Israel, radical Islam, anti-Semitism, and biblical prophecy. Could the fate of the world, of humanity itself, be tied to this place?
We came back to a land that was largely barren and empty, and we brought it back to life, and we're going to keep it.
The dragon will not prevail.
The Dragon's Prophecy, based on Jonathan Cahn's international bestseller. Watch it now or buy the DVD at salemnow.com. That's salemnow.com.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call now at 800-533-6605 for a free consultation. For 17 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and a Christian-owned company. Don't get stuck in the endless cycle of payments. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Christian-owned Total Financial Freedom now at 800-533-6605. That's 800-533-6605. 800-533-6605.
Eggland's Best. The only eggs with more fresh and delicious taste, plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Taking a look at the roads from the Team Hackberg Traffic Center, I'm Sue Aller. Still looking great on the Eden inbound from Lake Cook to Montrose, 14 minutes. Outbound is 13. The Kennedy inbound from O'Hare to the Burn interchange is 19, but outbound a 23-minute delay. It's going to cost you 46 minutes. The Eisenhower inbound from Wolf to the Old Post Office, looking good at 14. Outbound is also 14. Inbound Stevenson from the Tri-State to Lakeshore is 17. Outbound is 16. No delays on the Dan Ryan both ways from 95th to the Burn interchange. Inbound is 12. Outbound is 10. This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Blindster.com sells custom blinds, shades, and shutters at low prices. Their blinds are handcrafted to fit your windows, and if they don't, for any reason, they'll remake them for free. Your satisfaction is always guaranteed at Blindsters.com. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, but now a check of your forecast from the National Weather Service.
Today will bring variable cloudiness with a high of 74. Tonight, expect mostly cloudy skies with a low of 58. Tomorrow will also be mostly cloudy with a high of 69. By Wednesday, we'll see cloudy skies in the morning, giving way to times of sun and clouds in the afternoon with a high of 63. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is sponsored by Protecting Your Assets with Steve Shyman.
Listen Saturday mornings at 8. Learn more at willsave.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. The political violence from the left. You saw it again over the weekend in places like Chicago and Portland in the direction of federal law enforcement officers, as we've seen for the last several weeks, for the last several years in Portland. And Portland has sort of long been the base camp of Antifa ever since they almost beat independent journalist Andy Ngo to death on the streets of Portland, ever since the Portland authorities essentially abdicated the streets under the previous Mayor Strickland. The current mayor doesn't seem much better, at least from his meeting with Kristi Noem last week. We can glean that to be the case. Abdicated the streets and let Antifa just sort of patrol the streets, punishing anyone who didn't don a black mask or dare to question their authority and, of course, more importantly, righteousness, the source of their authority, so they tell us. And so now that Antifa has been designated a terrorist organization by the Trump administration, we're getting an interesting reaction from the left, which is to say that Antifa is not a thing. Doesn't even exist. This is the fodder for guffawing on late night talk shows, like Jimmy Kimmel. By the way, his controversy bump in terms of ratings, that has now subsided. Jimmy Kimmel has regressed to the mean of his very low numbers in terms of audience.
You understand, there's no Antifa. This is an entirely imaginary organization. There is not an Antifa. This is no different than if they announced they rounded up a dozen Decepticons. We've captured the Chupacabra, everyone. And then it was Trump's turn to ratchet up the rhetoric with fiery images conjured from no one has any idea where.
Right. It's hysterical. Antifa is a real cut-up. I mean, to the extent it exists at all. To the extent it's just not Decepticons, things that have been conjured from Trump's memory. Just like attacks on police, vandalizing, firebombing, Molotov cocktails in the direction of federal buildings, which is why the National Guard was deployed to Portland, is to provide more security for the federal building there that has long been a target of attacks from Antifa and other assorted professional agitators and neo-Jacobins. It's just a fiction. We got the same, a little bit more serious, I guess. You hear the same thing about this being just something that has been invented. Well, I go back to the undercover work of Project Veritas back when Jimmy Kimmel was there. And he had somebody embedded with the Rose City Antifa. Apparently they had, maybe they still have, I don't know. But they did at the time regular meetings where they talked about stuff and offered discussions on best practices when it came to confronting the police or just ordinary residents of Portland.
Don't be that f***ing guy with the goddamn spiked brass knuckles getting photos taken of you. Police are going to be like, perfect, we can prosecute these f***ers. Look how violent they are. Right? Not that we're not, but we need to hide.
Yeah, it's not that you shouldn't use the brass knuckles, just don't get photographed brandishing them.
How violent is Antifa or RCA in particular?
Practice things like an eye gouge. It takes very little pressure to injure someone's eyes.
They do not hesitate to either push back or incite some kind of violence. In our classes and in our meetings, before we do any sort of demonstration or black bloc, we talk about weapons detail and what we carry and what we should have. What is black bloc? Well, this is black bloc right now. The term is used to a tactic in which individuals conceal their identity to look uniform so that no one can be identified in an act of a crime. With RCA, it seems much more structured, almost like a company or like a business. So, I feel like there is some type of outside funding, influence, or resources being used.
Consider like destroying your enemy, not like delivering a really awesome right hand, left eye blow, It's not boxing, it's not kickboxing, it's like destroying your enemy.
Yeah, interesting. One guy suggesting that there had to be financing behind this. The classes and the meetings, that sounds organized. But it was a little bit more serious person. I mean, ostensibly, he holds a serious office. I wouldn't say he's a serious person. But Keith Ellison, you remember, he's the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. This was Keith Ellison on Antifa over the weekend. The same sort of yucking it up with the likes of that Eugene Daniels on MSNBC. Antifa, not real. It's not a thing.
Well, I want to caution people to not just dismiss this as utter stupidity, because it is utter stupidity. It's fact-free, it's lies, it's ridiculous, but it is dangerous for that very reason. Because if there really is no Antifa as an institution organization, then anybody who's associated with Antifa-like ideas, can be persecuted. All you have to do is say, prove you're not Antifa. Well, how can you prove a negative? And suddenly they're just going to be able to use that to justify suppressing speech, arresting people, deploying ICE, deploying National Guard, deploying military. So the fact that there is nobody even knows what it is. The first person I ever heard use the word Antifa was Donald J. Trump, when he was going on about how there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville. That's the first time I ever heard anyone use the term. So now it's this amorphous thing, and if nobody's really Antifa, then everybody could be. And the reason you can't find them is because they're just that crafty. And so this is something that we all need to be worried about. I know that there will be people, particularly in the legitimate world, who deals in facts and issues and things like that, is going to be saying, "Oh, how dumb this is." Be careful. They know it's dumb. They know it's lies. They're using it as a pretext to push forward illegitimate power that the president is usurping from just about everybody.
And then there's Keith Ellison, back when he was just a lowly member of Congress, posting a picture of himself. I just found the book that strike fear in the heart of real Donald Trump. And he's holding up a picture of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. It's not an organization. It's just sort of a belief system that's shared among a disparate, uncoordinated element within society. I mean, the book doesn't consummate organizational prowess, but when you start to piece this together, I mean, actually like substantive evidence that is pieced together, examples from Portland about classes and organizing and best practices and training sessions and so forth, literature about how to go about it, what they're doing now in terms of following the money, as Pam Bondi indicated last week in that roundtable on Antifa. There are a number of people who have been working on this. There was a good piece over the weekend at Zero Hedge. Antifa is only one mask worn by a much larger conglomerate, according to Seamus Bruner of the Government Accountability Institute. He calls it Riot Inc. Bruner, who's the director of research at Government Accountability, broke down the mechanics of the protest industrial complex, as it were, traced the money, the messaging, and the movements, exposing how the extremism of the left has evolved from decentralized networks of anarchist collectives into a well-funded infrastructure with global ambitions. They have some billionaires behind this, including one you've heard before, at least discussed on this show, Roy Singham, tech billionaire who is currently under multiple congressional investigations for funneling money to American-based protest groups during the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. Another one is this Chris Hone, who's a British billionaire who was just exposed and now has suspended his quote-unquote charitable giving at present. Jonathan Cho, who is a journalist at the Discovery Institute, described Antifa's organizing hubs as increasingly intertwined with what he calls the homeless industrial complex, which is a web of taxpayer-funded NGOs that are present in places like Portland, Seattle, L.A., Minneapolis. These are, working through the nonprofits to foment activity that is not nonprofit oriented and certainly not consistent with the stated mission of these nonprofits. We're here to combat homelessness. We're here to provide mental health services. We're going to organize for, community support, all the nebulous things that we've talked about when we did our Doge Illinois series about what these NGOs get from the state and what they actually use it for, who they hired. This same journalist at the Discovery Institute also has identified connections between Antifa and Democrat Socialists of America, the same group that's now backing Mamdani for New York City mayor. In point of fact, in 2019, at their national convention, the Democrat Socialists of America voted to formally adopt Antifa into its organization, a vote that passed with full approval. So you're incorporating Antifa into your DSA organization, but it's not real? So they don't think it's real either, or they're being fooled into thinking something that isn't real is real? That seems unlikely. And then this over the weekend, a Rutgers professor named Mark Bray, who has documented Antifa's activities, is leaving the country because of death threats that have been visited upon himself and his family. The executive order that Trump issued against Antifa said it turned him into a target. The pace of the death threats accelerated after the Fox News article about the Turning Point petition to have me fired. Earlier this month, launched a petition seeking to remove an Antifa-aligned professor to protect conservative students from political violence and rhetoric. So now they're doing this. Mark Bray, who wrote this book, and by this documenting, I made it sound like he's an investigative. He wrote the book that Keith Ellison was holding up as the book that scares Donald Trump. And so now he's saying he has to leave the country because he's under death threats, which is, of course, always what they do. They suggest that the perpetuators of violence are actually the victims of said violence. And so now Mark Bray is making this big show of leaving the country under alleged death threats when there is little evidence of said. On the flip side, and this, by the way, is concurrent to something that actually happened, which is a death threat that was visited on popular podcaster Benny Johnson, aligned with Turning Point USA, the Trump administration. He was visited by the FBI. The FBI is pursuing this case, and he was on with Hannity saying this about the death threats.
We received this letter at my home. The letter described in great detail exactly how they were going to kill me, how I was going to die, and how they would orphan my children and widow my wife, just like they did to my friend exactly 1 month ago today, as we all watched a great man, a generational talent, and what I believe would have been a future president, Charlie Kirk, get shot and killed on a live stream. Approximately 1 year ago, Charlie, we watched President Trump take a bullet to the head. Members of the MAGA movement get killed there in front of their families. 2 months ago, we watched a church filled with praying children get shot up by a left-wing radical. A couple of weeks ago, we watched a left-wing radical shoot up an ICE facility. These are extremists, they say, Charles. But are they really that extreme? My argument is that they are now mainstream in the Democrat Party, and I can prove it. In your beloved state of Virginia, the Democrats in that state are nominating for the top law enforcement official a man who did exactly what was done to my family. Criminally threatened to kill Republicans, to slaughter their children, simply because they are Republican. They called him little fascist. This man's name is Jay Jones, and he's running for the Attorney General position in Virginia right now. Will any Democrat have the bravery to say, we denounce political violence so much that we're going to call for him to drop out? That's exactly what you should do if you are a moral party and if you care about the lives of American children. And so the gauntlet has been thrown down today, and I'm just profoundly thankful for the Trump administration for locking up one of these psychotic and dangerous left-wing radicals.
Well, forget a moral party if you're just...
So the FBI intervening in this with this death threat in the direction of Benny Johnson. I wouldn't say that Jay Jones threatened to kill. He just wished for the death of. Not that that is laudable. Obviously, it is not. It is detestable, and he is unfit for office, particularly to be the chief law enforcement officer of a state running for attorney general. But we don't need to overstate the case, particularly because these incidents are so ubiquitous on the left. He's right about it being mainstreamed. And it's been that way for a while. It really has. As Heather McDonald writes in a good piece about hate speech, the hate speech, quote-unquote, conceit fuels political violence. For decades now, college campuses operate under the following set of propositions. Speech that challenges campus orthodoxies is hate speech. People who disagree with campus orthodoxies are haters. Therefore, hate speech and haters cause harm, which means because of the harm, hate speech and haters should be silenced, stigmatized, excluded from such citadels of tolerant, inclusive culture as universities. And once they got onto society, since we're all on one big college campus now, they should be silenced in polite society and maybe silenced permanently. Yeah. And so now, decades now this has been going on, and now it metastasized as all of those who were indoctrinated into this cult and its associated philosophy are operating in the real world in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And some of them, marginally connected to the real world, which makes it even more unstable, and them more unstable. It's not just, by the way, the Virginia Attorney General, Dem Attorney General candidate. New Jersey school board candidate has been caught sending vicious sexual messages about a conservative female board member in a group chat labeled, quote, "This bitch needs to die," unquote. This is in Marlboro, New Jersey, where the median home value is like $850,000. So this is a wealthy, honky enclave in New Jersey. Think Hinsdale. Photos of this board member, Scott Samaya, vile text about another board member, the MAGA board member, Danielle Bellomo, at a July school board meeting leaked this week on social media. Bellomo must be cold. Her nips could cut glass right. And he was, I assume, going to say right now. He was texting, and somebody actually took a photo of his phone screen. Mm-hmm. Again, the group chat, "This bitch needs to die." She's a 30-something school board member. So's he. She said, Bellomo, the target, "It was absolutely terrifying. When I found out about the messages, I was absolutely shocked, especially with the climate of our country. It sends chills down my spine. I'm a proud and unapologetic advocate for parents' rights, for my children, for our town and our state, and for that they have this hate for me." Yeah, they. Samaya, the guy who sent that text, is a 38-year-old accountant. See what I was saying about what Heather McDonald had written? The group text includes like 5 other dudes on this school board. The vicious chat group was believed to be comprised of 5 men and allegedly included another dude who's the Marlboro School Board vice president. And so now you've got resignations going and, you know, the tumult in this community. But 5 dudes, this bitch needs to die group chat, texting that sort of filth that you just heard that was captured in a photo and conceded because both he and another chick resigned from the race. The point is mainstream on that side. It is not just for the professional agitators like Antifa. Real thing, real network. It's being investigated. More to come. Stay tuned. But it's become a mainstream within that party. Now, you've had a few break from the ranks on various issues, from the government shutdown to the release of the hostages that happened this morning in Israel, or to Israel, I should say. But that party still has a huge problem with its failure to condemn elements within the party that are not inconsequential in number or motivation, who believe that violence is a legitimate means to political ends. That's a fact. And the documentation piles up higher and higher with each passing day. Dan Proft, Chicago's Morning Answer.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Looking for some hope? Listen to Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef on our sister station, AM 1160. Hope for your life. Weekday mornings starting at 8.
Hello, this is Alistair Begg. In September of 2026, I'll be teaching the Bible as we cruise through the Norwegian fjords. I'd love for you to join me. Call 855-565-5519 or visit deeperfaithcruise.com.
AM 560, The Answer.
Coming up at 7:07, we will turn our attention back to the hostage release in Israel. All 20 living hostages released. Phase 1 in moving towards implementation. In addition to that 60 Minutes piece I mentioned about Chinese communist cyber hacking. Stephen Bucci at 7:07, and it's now 7 o'clock on AM 560 WIND Chicago.
This is a Fox News alert. Hamas sets the hostages free, and President Trump is in Israel to celebrate with them. I'm Dave Anthony.
Today, the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace.
The president also just told Israel's parliament,
this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
And President Trump, who's still addressing lawmakers in the Knesset now, also thanked
all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free and to send them home. We had a lot of help. We had a lot of help from a lot of people that you wouldn't suspect.
And he'll soon meet some of them going to Egypt next. Now, as part of the Trump-brokered ceasefire plan, Israel is also releasing nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners into Gaza, where the Hamas terror attack triggered, also killed 67,000 Palestinians. News of the 20 living hostages being freed was celebrated in Israel. People cheered and chanted and sang there in Tel Aviv, but what about the remains of the 28 hostages Hamas is also supposed to hand over in the first phase of the ceasefire? Well, a statement from hostage families just out says they're shocked and dismayed that only 4 bodies will be returned today. For a 13th straight day, most of the federal government is closed, and the next vote to end the shutdown is tomorrow in the Senate, where Republicans and Democrats remain in a standoff over funding. Some workers deemed essential are still on the job, including federal investigators at the scene of Friday's explosion at a munitions plant in McEwen, Tennessee, west of Nashville, that left left 16 people dead.
Because we are impacting a government shutdown, that does not release any of these dedicated professionals from showing up and, again, providing answers to this community on what happened to their loved ones.
ATF Assistant Special Agents in Charge, Tyra Cunningham. America's listening to Fox News.
Good morning. It is 48 degrees in Chicago on AM 560, The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. Another court ruling puts President Trump's use of the National Guard here in Chicago on hold. Fox's Carmen Roberts has the details on yesterday's ruling.
An appeals court rules that National Guard troops sent to Illinois by President Trump can stay in the state and remain under federal control, but they cannot be deployed or put on patrol for now. The panel granted a pause in the case until it can hear further arguments. This follows a Thursday ruling by a federal judge that temporarily blocked the deployment, citing no evidence of a danger of rebellion in the state amid the president's immigration crackdown. Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
About 500 Guard members from Texas and Illinois are mostly stationed at a reserve center near Chicago. Few of them are at the ICE facility in Broadview. One of the most powerful lawmakers in Illinois state history is headed to prison. Jim Talamonte has more.
Brian Gaines, Honorable W. Russell Arrington, professor in state politics at the University of Illinois, said he did not think Madigan would end up behind bars.
I always thought he was a master of control and someone who had figured out just how to tiptoe along the lines of legality, but stay on the right side.
And Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle has unveiled a proposed $10 billion budget recommendation for fiscal year 2026. Preckwinkle said the budget does not include any layoffs, tax increases, or cuts to essential services. Cook County's budget increased from $5.2 billion in fiscal year 2018 to $9.94 billion in 2025. News is a service of AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Overpaying for dental implants is over. If you have Blue Cross, Blue Shield, PPO, or FEP, you could save 90% off on average to get your smile back. Learn more and check if you qualify at AlmostFreeTeeth.com. A check of the roads is coming up in 2 minutes on AM 560. The Answer.
Hugh Hewitt explains the importance of Israel.
Israel is America's #1 superpower ally on the planet. People used to think, the special relationship is with England and the United Kingdom or with France. And good, they're allies. They're in NATO, but they've gone a little bit crazy. We need Israel. They're an intelligence superpower. They are a nuclear superpower, and they have the will and ability to project power around the globe.
The Hugh Hewitt Show. Afternoons at 2, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for Townhall.com. As the Supreme Court begins its new term, one of its most closely watched cases comes out of Colorado. In Childs v. Salazar, a licensed Christian counselor is challenging a state law that bans conversion therapy. In other words, the law forbids any therapy that would challenge the state-sanctioned view that gender transition is every child's best course of action. But here's the problem for Colorado. The First Amendment forbids viewpoint discrimination. The government can't treat speech differently based only on the viewpoint it endorses. And Colorado's law does just that. Therapists can talk about gender transition, but only if they're in favor of it. Keep an eye on this case. It has big implications for free speech, for religious freedom, and for legal bans on so-called conversion therapy that have prevented struggling children from getting all the facts before they make life-changing decisions.
It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock is here with tips to help protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication on your accounts, report phishing, and update your software on all your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, LifeLock is your best choice. LifeLock not only alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal information, but also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. So stay smart, stay safe, and stay protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use the promo code BECK. Terms do apply.
He's coming. Here he goes. Surprise! Your table saw broke. Also, the warranty expired weeks ago, so you need to pay for a new one out of pocket.
At Progressive, we know small business owners don't usually like surprises because they cost you money. But a good surprise that could save you money? Getting a commercial auto quote from Progressive.
Oh, and the replacement part you ordered doesn't fit, so it's completely useless. What a waste.
Surprise yourself. See if you can save in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
Every day I speak with people who are worried and are feeling a lot of pressure because of credit card debt. That's why I'm very proud of what we do at Trinity. We just help. We give people the support they need, along with a real plan to become debt-free. Credit card bills are consolidated into a single monthly payment that is much less than what they were paying before. Most of our members end up saving thousands and even may improve their credit scores by as much as 200 points. I know from the bottom of my heart that I'm making a difference in the lives of the people we help. It just makes me really happy.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
My name is Julie, and I'm a Trinity counselor. Call me and become debt-free for keeps.
1-800-990-6976.
Did you know that AM 560 Radio has a full-service digital marketing division called Salem Surround? If you're a business decision maker, listen up. AM 560 listeners are everywhere your potential audience is. So are our incredible targeting capabilities. We localize digital marketing and put it within reach of every business, small and large, in Chicagoland and beyond. Salem Surround offers AI-powered marketing solutions that reach your ideal audience. Whether or not you tap into the proven live, local, and emotional connection that AM 560 Radio brings, Salem Surround offers a total marketing solution to our partners. All-in-one digital solutions that provide targeted local digital and social media ads, Google AdWords management, website services, video strategy, search optimization, and even a management dashboard to offer you total campaign updates and transparency. Your Salem Surround representative is located right here in Chicago. Experience the Salem Surround digital revolution today. Call 847-472-8951. That's 847-472-8951.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans? With credit card debt at all-time highs, Debt Relief Advocates is urgently notifying consumers of debt relief now being made available, designed to aid consumers with out-of-control credit card debt. Those who qualify and enroll for this relief program will only have to pay back a fraction of what they owe. This is not bankruptcy or a debt consolidation loan. This is a relief program that credit card companies would rather you not know about, as it ends your debt nightmare and saves you lots of money. Consumers owing at least $10,000 in credit card debt or personal loans can now take advantage of this debt relief as the cost of living skyrockets. Debt Relief Advocates has established a relief hotline for you to call to learn what debt reduction you may qualify for. For this free information, call 800-422-1609, 800-422-1609, 800-422-1609, or simply visit godra.com.
MyPillow is excited to announce they're having their biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. My Slippers, only $39.98. Any color, any style. Regular $149.98. Now, only $39.98. That's a $110 savings. Once they're gone for good. My Towels are finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And for the first and only time, get their limited edition premium My Pillows made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset. Queens $17.98, Kings only $19.98. Also, for a limited time, when your order is over $100, you'll receive free shipping plus $100 in free digital gifts. So go to mypillow.com or call 800-489-0201 and use promo code LIBERTY. That number again is 800-489-0201. Promo code LIBERTY.
You need a construction company, but who?
Call Crosscom.
A construction company you can trust that shares your Christian and conservative values. For decades, Crosscom has been doing work in Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana, and Wisconsin. Roofs, siding, windows, doors, gutters, basically everything for your home or business, even solar. Quality work and professional services that make you feel great about your decision to work with Crosscom.
Call Crosscom.
630-871-5500. Give them a chance to earn your business. If your repairs are due to storm, fire, or flood damage, you need to
call Crosscom.
They're licensed public adjusters. They work for you, not the insurance company. Crosscom will work to get you the money you deserve, the maximum payout. They know the insurance companies and how to deal with them. They win for you.
Call Crosscom.
Crosscom Construction and Public Adjusters.
This is Dan Lights with Crosscom. You can trust us with your home or business for high quality work and fair prices. It's the only way we do business.
630-871-5500. CrosscomPublicAdjusters.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. As the Supreme Court begins its new term, one of its most closely watched cases comes out of Colorado. In Childs v. Salazar, a licensed Christian counselor is challenging a state law that bans conversion therapy. In other words, the law forbids any therapy that would challenge the state-sanctioned view that gender transition is every child's best course of action. But here's the problem for Colorado. The First Amendment forbids viewpoint discrimination. The government can't treat speech differently based only on the viewpoint it endorses. And Colorado's law does just that. Therapists can talk about gender transition, but only if they're in favor of it. Keep an eye on this case. It has big implications for free speech, for religious freedom, and for legal bans on so-called conversion therapy that have prevented struggling children from getting all the facts before they make life-changing decisions.
Taking a look at the roads from the Team Hochberg Traffic Center, I'm Sue Aller. Got a crash on 80 westbound at 57. That will slow you down. The Eden still looks good both ways from Lake Cook to Montrose. 15 minutes inbound, outbound is 14. The Kennedy inbound from O'Hare to the Byrne interchange, 23 minutes, but a 24-minute outbound delay. It will cost you 47 minutes. The Eisenhower inbound from Wolf to the old post office is 17. Outbound is 19. Inbound Stevenson from the Tri-State to Lakeshore is 25. Outbound is 17. The Dan Ryan from 95th to the Byrne interchange inbound is 14. Outbound is 11. And the Tri-State northbound slows down between Reagan Memorial Tollway and the Eisenhower. That's all because of slow traffic on the ramp to get onto the outbound Eisenhower. This reports a service of Air Right Heating Cooling. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, but now a check of your forecast from the National Weather Service.
Today will bring variable cloudiness with a high of 74. Tonight, expect mostly cloudy skies with a low of 58. Tomorrow will also be mostly cloudy with a high of 69. By Wednesday, we'll see cloudy skies in the morning, giving way to times of sun and clouds in the afternoon with a high of 63. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and a momentous morning overnight, as we were discussing earlier in the program. Phase one of the deal between Israel and Hamas, essentially authored by President Trump with the support regionally of Arab nations, that was mission critical to get Hamas to accede to a deal that it otherwise was inclined not to agree to consummate. That's according to Wall Street Journal reporting over the weekend. Interesting piece we'll discuss momentarily. But all 20 living hostages have now been released after 738 days in captivity. And we'll see what happens on a go-forward basis. We want to talk about the prospects of peace. But the response from erstwhile Trump detractors, and that's to use that word very lightly, detractor, for the last decade, who suggested that he was the reincarnation of a amalgam of the 20th century's worst dictators, are now offering the kinds of commentary that we heard from, incredibly, one Hillary Clinton over the weekend. Let's play Hillary.
It's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan and seeing a path forward for what's often called the day after. Most importantly, the conflict hopefully will end with the ceasefire. The hostages will be returned. And then the very hard work of rebuilding Gaza, of finding the kind of security that Israel and the Palestinians after Hamas deserve to have, moving forward with the other points in the plan to try to create an opportunity for Palestinians to have a better life and for Israel to have greater peace and security. I am very hopeful that we'll be able to see progress. Today's a good start, but we have to keep going from here.
It's a typical sort of pro forma foreign policy wag word salad, but the bottom line is she was compelled to be complimentary and optimistic based on what Trump has accomplished that was consummated this morning. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Stephen Bucci, who served America for decades as a Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Stephen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me back.
So your perspective on, phase one, check. Now what happens?
I am very, very pleased that the living hostages have in fact been released. There was no nonsense, no, sudden Palestinian ceremonies about it and, to humiliate the hostages. They did what they said they were going to do, which surprised the heck out of me. Now the next step will be to see what they do with the remains of the deceased hostages. That one could be tougher because, it's not like they put these folks in a mortuary and left them there, wrapped up and ready to be delivered at some later date. They could be buried anywhere in Gaza. You hope they remember where they all are and they can get the remains back to their families. I think that's a big step. And then the next part is, will they really disarm, and will the 2,000 or so convicted terrorists that they're releasing, are those people going to abide by this agreement to stop the terror and to stand down? All of that is still up in the air. I'm praying that it goes, but I'm still a little dubious because I don't trust Hamas.
Well, right. What did you make, though, of that Wall Street Journal piece that I mentioned over the weekend that suggested that the Qataris and others, but primarily the Qataris, were particularly instrumental in getting Hamas to accept a deal that they otherwise were disinclined to accept, and what that means in terms of the ongoing pressure the region will be able to continue to apply to get Hamas to be as peaceful. Well, I mean, to peacefully coexist, really, because it's either we're going to peacefully coexist or we're not.
I think we're going to find over time, as more of these stories leak out, that there was a heck of a lot of additional levers of pressure that were applied in this case that people were never willing to do before, or we couldn't get to an agreement on the good guy side to put that kind of pressure on Hamas. So we'll see. I don't think we know the whole story yet of the insides, what was promised, what was told that, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen kind of statement. So I think there were a lot of carrots and a lot of sticks applied. And Hamas finally, read the tea leaves, so to speak, and said, well, we better make a deal right now or we will literally disappear and with no options anymore. But again, they're not particularly trustful negotiating partners. So, they may say, yes, we'll do that, and then turn around, and in their culture, it's perfectly okay to do this, turn around and do exactly the opposite when they think it's advantageous to do so.
Well, I'm sure, but I guess the question becomes, what, infrastructure can be built that provides that consistent pressure on Hamas? In other words, what is that provisional governing organization in Gaza look like, and how do you keep Hamas and other Islamist terrorist organizations out of it? And what's your sense of the answer to that question?
it's going to be very tough. A lot of that is going to depend on the Arab and other Muslim partners. Remember, like the Turks are a big part of this. The people in the Middle East don't like the Turks. They don't want Turkish troops there because the last time the Turks sent an army in there, they stayed for about 400 or 500 years. The Saudis are not well thought of in Gaza, but they're going to be a big part of this as far as building the structures. So there's a lot of improbables there. I agree with you. That's really the key. If that structure can be built in a way that the Palestinian people feel like they're, in their own view, they're getting a fair shake. The Israelis don't want to run Gaza. They don't want to own all those Palestinians, but they want them to stop trying to kill Israelis. So whatever this provisional government structure that comes in is going to have to build that confidence with the Palestinians, but also ensure that they behave, because otherwise the Israelis are going to say, okay, back at it. They're not just going to let the rockets start going again. That's just not going to happen.
Even a wag like David Brooks was forced to concede that Trump has handled the Middle East much better than Obama and Biden did in their combined 12 years. And his point, which is one we've made here too, so it's hardly a grand insight, but it bears repeating, and particularly unfolding in somebody like David Brooks, who finally got the idea here, which is that Trump was smart in completely backing Israel and Israel's security as the priority and a must-have, and then using that trust relationship he built with Bibi, that he was 100% committed to Israeli security, to then pressure him to move a little bit too to get this deal done.
Yeah, and that real negotiations, that's generally what happens is, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I lost you for a second. Generally, both sides have to give a little bit. And I think you're right. By Trump taking an unambiguous position of a friend and a backer of Netanyahu and of Israel, but a friend doesn't mean you do everything that your friend wants you to do. A really good friend kind of gives you good advice on how you can get to where you want to go. And it seems like the trust between those two in particular got us to the point where Netanyahu would say, okay, I understand. Let's try it your way. And it's worked. So I think that, Trump's unabashed self-confidence in this case was exactly what was needed, and he made the right decisions, and we have this good result.
I want to get your reaction to another topic, the Chinese Communist Party and cyber attacks. There was a profile piece on four-star General Tim Hawk yesterday on 60 Minutes. And one of the things he focused on was, and he's a former head of U.S. Cyber Command in addition to other positions over the course of previous administration. And he talked about how many cyber attacks are launched on American companies, units of government, our water treatment facilities, sensitive areas, as well as just sort of private citizens on a sort of algorithmically automated cyber attacks, always looking for ways in, and then to get ways into sensitive areas and just to sit there and wait to potentially leverage the access to be disruptive if there is a conflict that escalates between the Chinese Communist Party and the United States. It was really interesting. And one of the examples he gave in terms of thinking about this, the way the Chinese Communist Party thinks, or understanding how the Chinese Communist Party thinks about this, don't think just big cities and big obvious installations or the Pentagon. Think small communities and places you wouldn't otherwise think of, and sensitive infrastructure in smaller communities that you can replicate throughout the country. And the example they gave was Littleton, Massachusetts. So can you play that clip?
So help me understand. Why Littleton?
If we are involved in something in the Indo-Pacific that is becoming a challenge between the United States and China, the more that China could get us to focus at home means now our resources are focused in the homeland. That would distract us, distract resources, make it more difficult for us to mobilize in a crisis.
Littleton may not be a very large place, but if the Chinese took its water offline, the entire country would be focused on it.
And if there were 3 to 4 other examples simultaneously, plus an information campaign, it could seem much larger than it is, or it could be done in critical places that would have a greater effect.
Other critical places believed to have been targeted by China over years include New York City's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, 13 gas pipeline operators, the Port of Houston, and major phone companies.
So, Stephen, the point here is, water treatment facilities in small town America, but you replicate this across the country, and you're sitting there and you have the ability to poison the water or otherwise impede the delivery of clean water to the residents of communities. All of a sudden you have attention distracted away from whatever may be going on in the Indo-Pacific, as that gentleman said, and on to the home front, and that's to the Chinese Communist Party's benefit.
Yeah, I mean, the Chinese have been doing this kind of stuff for decades. They start by just trying to get everything they can get. Now it's more targeted. And because of the deniability, that cyber attacks give people, or organizations like the Chinese Communist Party, you can kind of get away with it. We're not ready to go, there's not a place you can go and bomb in China to make all this cyber stuff stop. And while it'd be nice to hit, return on our computer and send a counter bomb through the internet to go take out their stuff at their end, it doesn't work that way. So between the deniability and the difficulty to reach the people at the other end, they get away with this stuff.
Well, and so, the assessment that the general made is essentially that we're pretty good at this, but we're not where we need to be. And I assume we'll never be where we need to be because, we're always in pursuit of perfection, and that's impossible. But it was a sense that we're still not operating at the scale we need to be as good as we can be realistically. Is that your assessment?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the scale we need to be at is as big and as comprehensively as China does it, no, we're nowhere near that. They throw a lot more assets at this. Like, even with kinetic things, our stuff is generally better, but they have more of it. And it works that way in cyber as well. I think ours is probably superior, but they have a lot more that they're doing at any given time, and that many times at least makes us equal, in some case makes them better because of the scale that they do it on. So, and Americans, we tend to forget, once you have a big cyber event, you have a story like this that plays, everybody gets all excited about it, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, because nothing else has happened, we all forget about it. And that's problematic for us. We do not have the kind of focus that some of the operators in China have to accomplish these goals, in some cases very nefarious goals.
And who's ultimately the responsibility is the Director of National Intelligence? Is that who the U.S. Cyber Command is under?
No, the U.S. Cyber Command is under the Department of Defense. The NSA, which is also part of the Department of Defense, that is under the Director of National Intelligence, and the commanders of those two organizations are usually the same person. So there's a lot of overlap between those two DOD and the DNI.
So this is something that Gabbard and Hegseth need to make a priority.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or one of their priorities for sure. And they are. I mean, they're not ignoring this. But are we doing enough? I don't know. As you said, perfection is what we're looking for, and that's really hard to achieve.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer, top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow at the Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Stephen, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you next week.
And Stephen Bucci joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Huber, co-developer of Virago, the immune enhancement cocktail. Did you know that the 23 natural ingredients in Virago are not only an immune enhancer, but also support and protect your heart, lungs, brain, and kidneys? These organs are negatively affected by numerous diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and chronic inflammation. The natural ingredients in Virago, such as luteolin and fisetin, protect and improve the cognitive function in your brain. The uracilic acid in Virago protects and improves kidney functions, whereas quercetin protects and improves heart function. These are just a few of the natural ingredients that provide a synergistic effect. Virago, inspiring healthy choices.
Boost your immune system with Virago. Order your bottle of Virago today. Order online at myvirago.com and use coupon code IMMUNE to save 30%. Maha and Virago, making America healthy again.
It's news, opinion, and insight at the speed of your life. Streaming at 560theanswer.com on the AM 560 mobile app, or tell your smart speaker to play The Answer Chicago.
Good morning. It is 51 degrees in Chicago on AM 560 The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. President Donald Trump is defending his administration's deployment of troops to Chicago amid legal battles, and he's got some choice words about our governor.
You know, they had over 4,000 people killed in Chicago over a short 4,000 people. And I have to watch this slob of a governor stand up and say that, well, everything's okay. We've got it under control.
Meanwhile, the state of Illinois is suing the administration, calling the deployments unconstitutional, while a judge here in Chicago is temporarily blocking National Guard deployments despite the troops already having arrived. The administration says that will not slow down the ICE operations. And more than 53,000 runners took to the streets of Chicago yesterday for the 47th annual Chicago Marathon. Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda came in first with a time of 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 23 seconds. And Ethiopian Hawi Feza Geji was first in the women's division. Top finishers from the United States were Connor Mance, who placed fourth in the men's division, and Natasha Rogers, who finished sixth in the women's race. News is a service of the AM 560 store. Order t-shirts, hoodies, and more from your favorite AM 560 brands, including Profit University and The Sean Thompson Show, when you go to 560theanswer.com/store. A check of the roads is coming up in 2 minutes on AM 560, The Answer.
Get your tickets for Freedom Summit Chicago 2025, happening on Saturday, November 8th at Westin Chicago Northwest in Itasca. This year, featuring Dr. Ben Carson, Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, along with Dan Proft, Sean Thompson, John Anthony, and many more. This event will sell out fast, so get your tickets today at freedomsummitchicago.com. That's freedomsummitchicago.com. Sponsored in part by Lutheran Life Communities, Virago, and by Senior Helpers of Naperville.
Hey, it's Scott Tucker, and I'm here with
Amy Jacobson
from Retirement Dakota with Scott Tucker and Amy Jacobson here on AM 560 The Answer. Now, I'm a financial advisor, and Amy's the co-host for our program. You know, Amy, recently President Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. A lot of folks aren't realizing, Amy, that if they have highly appreciated assets, they can potentially tax defer the capital gains tax, place that money into a qualified opportunity fund, and then 10 years from now, get back out of that investment and pay no capital gains tax on either investment. Have you heard of such a thing, Amy?
I did not know about that. That seemed to be hidden in the bill.
It's only 900 some pages.
Yeah,
we have to pass it to see what's in it.
An easy beach read, yes.
Yes. And now there's another thing in the bill as well, Amy. Section 1202. Amy, did you read Section 1202?
I did not, but thank you for the homework assignment.
If you're a small business owner, many small business owners can now sell their small business and potentially pay no federal capital gains taxes taxes on that capital gain of selling their business.
Wow.
If you'd like to get a free copy of my latest book, Escape Illinois, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Text the keyword book. That's BOOK to 224-496-3999. Text the keyword book to 224-496-3999. In addition to the free copy of my latest book, Escape Illinois, Should I Stay or Should I Go? You'll also get our entire Retirement Decoded toolkit. We'll also give you the opportunity to talk to us 15 minutes for free over the telephone at another time so we can go through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act with you, show you how to potentially sell your highly appreciated assets and pay no federal capital gains tax, how qualified opportunity funds work, and also if you're a small business owner, how to potentially pay no capital gains on the sale of your small business through Section 1202 of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Text book to 224-496-3999 or call that very same number, 224-496-3999.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Firm does not offer tax advice.
Let's see, if something costs less, a lot less, but people are actually happier with it, that sounds like something to look into. And that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard joining MediShare can save you or your family up to $500 a month, and that's huge. But it's also true. People are just happier with it. They love being part of something that reflects and promotes their values and what they believe in. MediShare works, too. It's been around for 30 years now, and members have shared more than $7 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network, so yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care, whether you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan that you're happy with. Here you go. You can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. It's 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE. 833-34-BIBLE.
You know what really keeps me up at night? It's the criminals feel more and more bold. They have no fear of any consequences because there are none. So I did what anyone with a family should do. I called Goldilocks. They're not just some cookie-cutter security company. Goldilocks has been protecting Chicagoland homes and businesses for 4 decades, 40 years. And they actually listen. Their technician comes out to the house. He takes a look at what you need to make your house a smart home with a security system you can monitor from anywhere. It's built specifically for me and my family. Motion sensors, smart locks, cameras, monitoring, all customized. I don't trust anybody in Illinois to protect my family. I do it, and I did it by calling Goldilocks. I trust Goldilocks to keep my house, my property, and my family safe. Tell them Sean Thompson sent you, and Goldilocks will include 3 months free monitoring with any new installation. Call Goldilocks at 708-899-5600. That's 708-899-5600. Or visit them online at GoldilocksInc.com.
Wow. At the time of this being written, both gold and silver are up some 40%. That's 40% in just 1 year. In fact, this past year, gold has broken all-time historic records by hundreds of dollars an ounce. And unlike all other financial instruments used today, that historic record goes back thousands of years. In times like these, prices have never been better on most collector and gold coins. Fox Valley Coins in Naperville is trying to keep up with demand. So they're paying the most ever on not only most gold coins and bars, but also those old coin and paper money collections. They're especially looking for the scarcer dates and higher grade coins. Take advantage of the record high market price and our huge demand now, whether you're buying or selling, or just want to find out their worth. Fox Valley Coins is the place to go. Fox Valley Coins is on Route 59, just 1 light north of I-88 at the Naperville-Warrenville border. Family-owned integrity since 1981.
Eggland's Best, the only eggs with more fresh and delicious taste, plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Taking a look at the roads from the Team Hochberg Traffic Center, I'm Sue Aller. Still in great shape both ways on the Eden from Lake Cook to Montrose, 15 minutes. Outbound is 14 to Kennedy. Inbound from O'Hare to the Byrne Interchange is 23 minutes. Outbound is 41. The Eisenhower is 18 minutes in both directions from Wolf to the Old Post Office. Inbound Stevenson from the Tri-State to Lakeshore is 27. Outbound 17. And no delays both ways on the Dan Ryan from 95th to the Byrne Interchange. There is a crash blocking the right lane on the exit ramp ramp on the northbound Tri-State to get off onto Willow Road. This report is sponsored by Staples. Today is not just any day, it's your lucky day. Staples Easy Deal Days are extended. Now through October 18th, Easy Rewards members score up to 40% off more than 1,000 products in the store and online. Head to your local Staples store or visit staples.com to save while supplies last. Staples, that was easy. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, but now a check of your forecast from the National Weather Service.
Today will be partly sunny and pleasant with a high of 70. Tonight, expect partly cloudy skies with a low of 55. Tomorrow will bring a mix of sun and clouds, creating pleasant conditions with a high of 73. Tuesday looks mostly cloudy with a high of 68. Wednesday starts off cloudy, but will transition to a mix of sun and clouds in the afternoon, reaching a high of 60. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan Proft here, and Jelly Belly has a side hustle apparently now. Governor Pritzker serving as a domestic correspondent, Chicago correspondent for the Jimmy Kimmel Show. Pritzker in full flak jacket, yucking it up with Jimmy Kimmel about the state of affairs in Chicago. Of course, there's nothing to see here when it comes to violence, mayhem, city disintegration. Let's take a listen.
We also got a very special report filed by J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois.
This is J.B. Pritzker reporting from war-torn Chicago. As you can see, there's utter mayhem and chaos on the ground. It's quite disturbing. The Milwaukee Brewers have come in to attack our Chicago Cubs. We've seen people being forced to eat hot dogs with ketchup on them. And our deep dish pizza, has gone shallow. So it's a challenge to survive here in the city of Chicago, but there's no hellscape that I'd rather be in.
Well, thank you, Governor. And please know that you and the Cubs will be in our prayers.
Quite a tandem, maybe a troika now, JB, BJ, and Jimmy Kimmel. It's all fun and games when you're the governor. Boy, that's just trenchant commentary, too. That rapier wit. Deep dish pizza, ketchup on your hot dog. That's a real Chicagoan for you. So authentic. For more on this and other policy matters, pleased to be joined by Paul Vallas, former superintendent of Chicago Public Schools, of course, now the CEO of the McKenzie Institute. Paul, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me this morning. Notice he gave that interview from war-torn downtown. Wearing a river. Wearing a bulletproof vest that looked like it was made for a kindergartner.
Well, right, because this is all playing dress up for BJ and JB, isn't it?
Well, he needs a diversion. Illinois is now the highest tax state in the country, and if you look at the latest report from WaltHub, Illinois ranks 50th in equity for all those progressives out there who have been advocating for these so-called progressive policies. If you are black, Illinois is the absolute worst state to live in, and clearly by virtually every economic indicator, Illinois is near last, particularly in job creation. In fact, since 2019, COVID, the only real jobs that have been created have been jobs in the governmental sector, not the private sector.
And so the question, I guess, becomes, part of this is just a tea leaf reading exercise, which is, you think that JB and BJ will continue to get away with this through their respective reelections by just being a Trump antagonist. And if they draw enough fire from conservatives like me, then that's all they need, just to juxtapose themselves against Trump, against local conservatives. I'm not them. I'm fighting them. The actual quality of life on the ground, the quality of the schools, the quality of public safety, job opportunities that you were just mentioning matter less. I can get away with it if I'm just a consistent antagonist on a daily basis.
Well, I think that's their strategy. For Johnson, it's not going to work. He's rising in the polls, but I think he's going to top out in the 20s. If there's any quality candidate who ends up in the runoff against him, and I think if there's a lot of candidates running for mayor, there will be Johnson will likely be in the runoff. The more candidates, the greater the likelihood. Because if you remember, Lightfoot got into the runoff with 17% of the vote, and Johnson last time got into the runoff with 22% of the vote. But I think there are a number of candidates who could beat him. I mean, he's doing abysmally on the lakefront, and there's just tepid support in the black community. So he's going down now. You know, Pritzker. I mean, this is about Pritzker running for president, and you know, I used to think that Newsom was the worst governor in the nation, but I think hands down Pritzker is. I don't think it's going to resonate. I think he is conscious of the fact that he may never be president, so this is really as much a part of his campaign for the White House. I mean, for re-election. And you know, look, he's going to spend $200 million. Leave it to the Republican Party to endorse or to put up the wrong candidate against him. He's probably clearly going to work really hard to get the candidate in the race against him that is probably the least popular. So, you know, so I think this is a big part of his re-election campaign.
And, you know, you wrote this piece about the Chicago restaurant scene a couple of weeks ago that I discussed in the program. But I mean, revisit that just in the larger context of the lack of job opportunities, but even more to the point, something that Ken Griffin mentioned last week. You know, it is increasingly easy to get people who have built a successful career and successful life in places like Chicago and New York, he mentioned, to leave those places for places like Miami, where he left it. And that includes, it's just not just financiers or C-suite level executives, but it's also entrepreneurs. And, you know, the restaurant industry, which is so critical to Chicago and Chicago's vibrancy, is probably a good proxy for the small business owner-operator entrepreneurial class.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you realize that for every meal that is served, the government's taking almost 12% off the top. You know, I mean, the restaurants are marginal businesses. So they probably lost as many as 5,000 jobs. I mean, the restaurant economy is huge. But the restaurant economy, like so many small businesses, are just being devastated. But, you know, understand, Illinois has lost 1.6 million residents in the last 20 years, and it's accelerated since COVID. And the overwhelming and part of the sanctuary state strategy is to really stabilize the population losses with illegal migrants. Illinois has over 530,000 Water Points reports to illegal migrants. The exodus has been overwhelmingly an upper income, a middle and upper income exodus. In fact, the exodus from the city of black residents has been the highest in the nation. Last 20 years, more than a quarter million black residents have left. Overwhelmingly, black middle income families with children. The Chicago Public Schools have half the black population than they had 20 years ago. So this is a state that people are fleeing, in a city that people are fleeing in record numbers. The city's population, both in the schools and its overall population, is the lowest in 100 years. The only reason that many city workers remain in the city is because of the residency requirements. So clearly, it's a combination of high taxes, a combination of horrible schools and the lack of school choice, and obviously then all the other things, the corruption, the fact that it's one of the worst places to do business with. And of course, there's no chance to challenge the machine because this state is so gerrymandered that regardless of what happens, the Democrats are going to continue to control the city of Chicago, and they're going to continue to really control the legislature, both House and Senate. Even if you elect a Republican governor, he or she is going to be facing an almost Democratic veto-proof House and Senate. So the state is really screwed.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting. All that time that was spent on focusing on Madigan, who reports to federal prison today to serve out his 7.5-year sentence. All that time that was spent by the Republican Party, I know I was a part of it, focusing on Madigan and driving his numbers down in the suburbs and trying to connect suburban legislators to Madigan because they are his toadies. They are roll call votes for him. He financed them. And that was always the case. And now they're roll call votes for Chris Welch and Don Harmon. It's the same dynamic. But I mean, I'm just curious, you know, since you have, a longitudinal perspective on this. You know, Mike Madigan reporting to federal prison today, just like Ed Burke did prior to him, with not with a bang, but with a whimper. You know, after all that was said and done and all of the understanding that was driven, and a lot of it actually was assimilated by Chicagoland in terms of this guy is a real problem to Illinois' success. And yet he, you know, the trial and everything, people barely paid attention to it. It seems like once you're out of power, then it's a shoulder shrug and no lessons learned, and it's just the next guy up.
Absolutely. Look, it's the system that's corrupt. It's the institution that's corrupt, not the individual. Look, I mean, Welch is just a new and improved, or some would claim a worse version than Madigan, or for that matter, even in the city of Chicago. Tony Preckwinkle is Boss Preckwinkle. I mean, it's the same system with perhaps worst operators in terms of just their, their inefficiency even at politics. So at the end of the day, you know, it's the corrupt system. The system is broken, and, you know, whoever they're replaced with, we're still saddled with the same gerrymandered map that really undermines democracy even within a debate, even within the Democratic Party, because at least when the Republican and Democratic, when the Democratic majorities were based on, like in the Senate, a few votes, there were independent-minded or maybe moderate-minded Democrats who would sometimes align and vote with the Republicans so that they would advance a more reasonable agenda. But even that has disappeared. But I tweeted something the other day. If I have a minute, Johnson had a press conference on Friday. Again, he and Stacey Davis Gates are trying to scare the living daylights out of the city of Chicago, particularly school children in Chicago, creating this specter of imminent ICE raids. And they talked about the police department or ICE dispensing tear gas near a Chicago public school. And it came out the same day WGN did a report that said that Chicago leads the nation with 3,000 shot near schools last year. You know, Chicago is leading the nation again this year with 182 school-aged students, 17 years and younger, murdered or wounded this year alone. And if you remember, when Johnson and Stacey Davis Gates shut the school district down for almost 2 years during COVID, that second year, when these kids were out of school, there were 447 children who were murdered and wounded. It really infuriated me that these type of stats are being ignored and that they're now trying to terrorize the Chicago public school children with these tales of ICE raids when they have done nothing to protect the children of Chicago. In fact, it's CTU is responsible for the removal of police officers in the high schools who are there to deter active shooters. So at the end of the day, this is it's the worst of the worst, and people need to wise up and realize that they're really destroying a great city.
Well, and Stacey Davis Gates said at that City Club speech a couple of months ago, yeah, though these are our children. When people criticize us for saying these are our children, the CPS students, they are our children. Okay, well, if they're your children, then how you doing?
Well, the schools are the worst of the worst. There's no doubt about it. And look, they haven't even followed through. The union has been resisting these Inspector General reports that investigated hundreds and hundreds of accusations in cases of child abuse, including things like sexual molestation, et cetera. So you've seen the teachers union doesn't give a damn about the kids. They've really become a far left political party. They're advancing an agenda that limits school choice and that blocks any opportunities for schools to be improved anything that impacts their members or their dues or their work level or their work responsibilities, or for that matter, anything that holds them accountable, they oppose. So it's the reason that the district has lost about 100,000 students since the current leadership of the Chicago Teachers Union assumed power about 14 years ago.
He is Paul Vallas, former CPS CEO, now the CEO of the McKenzie Foundation. Paul, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Have a great week.
You too, and you join us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock is here with tips to help protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication on your accounts, report phishing, and update your software on all your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, LifeLock is your best choice. LifeLock not only alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal information, but also fixes identity theft, guaranteed, or your money back. So stay smart, stay safe, and stay protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use the promo code BECK. Terms do apply.
You ever wonder why Verizon charges twice as much as Pure Talk for the same basic service? Think it might have something to do with the fact that Verizon spends $12 billion a year on advertising and promotion. That's billion with a B. Yeah, Pure Talk doesn't spend that kind of money on commercials. That's why they can offer unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data on a blazing fast 5G network for just $25 a month. Save an additional 50% off your first month when you dial pound 250 and say the words micro. That's pound 250, micro.
Gain insight into building strong marriages and raising godly children with Focus on the Family with Jim Daly each weekday at 11:30 a.m. on our sister station, AM 1160. Hope for your life.
You okay down there?
I tripped over old china boxes in the basement, and now I'm stuck behind the ping pong table we never use.
I'm coming to the rescue, if I can find you.
You know, if we finished this basement, we could actually enjoy this space.
I think it's time to call Forever Remodeling.
Forever Remodeling turns disaster zones into game rooms, guest bedrooms and bathrooms, home theaters, a custom space just for you. Visit foreverremodeling.com. That's the number 4, everremodeling.com.
Don't miss In Grace with Pastor Jim Scudder Jr., now heard on Sunday mornings at 7:30. Tune in and find hope as Jim Scudder explores God's Word and His world each Sunday morning right here on AM 560. The Answer.
Rick Borick talks about the risk of being in the stock market right near retirement.
It's easy to drive around with no seatbelt on if you never think you're going to have an accident, right? And you go, well, it's never going to go down. I don't need protection for my portfolio. We're a big fan of getting those gains, but we're also a bigger fan of not taking huge losses.
Unleash your wealth, Saturday at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. on AM 560, The Answer.
The Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
This is the important thing to recognize about Trump is he's a very transactional guy. Trump will impose a penalty, and if you come to him and say, well, let's make a deal. This is the actual opposite of socialism. This is called cutting a deal to make something work. And I think that's all that goes through Trump's mind.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or at SalemPodcastNetwork.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer. News, opinion, insight. This is AM 560, The Answer. WIND, Chicago. Streaming at 560theanswer.com on the AM 560 mobile app, or tell your smart speaker to play The Answer Chicago.
This is a Fox News alert. The last of the hostages Hamas still held in Gaza are now free. I'm Dave Anthony.
After 2 harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious.
President Trump addressing Israel's parliament calls it a historic dawn for a new Middle East.
So as we celebrate today, let us remember how this nightmare of depravity and death all began.
Referencing the Hamas terror attack that triggered the war.
The cruelty of October 7th struck to the core of humanity itself.
Israel's war left 67,000 Palestinians dead and much of Gaza in ruins.
And the total focus of Gazans must be on restoring the fundamentals of stability, safety, dignity, and economic development, so they can finally have the better life that their children really do deserve.
The president is now at the airport, ready to go to Egypt next, and the Trump-brokered ceasefire plan includes Israel releasing more than 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. As for the hostages set free,
2 years of tears, but these are tears of joy. Einav Zangaukar embraces her son Matan. My life, you are my life. He's been in captivity for 738 days, but along with 19 others is back home in Israel. Those joyful scenes reflected across the country. But for some families, the agony continues. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum says only 4 of the 28 bodies Hamas still holds will be returned today.
Fox's Jonathan Savage. The manhunt continues in South Carolina for the gunman who went on a shooting spree early yesterday, killing 4 people.
It happened on St. Helena Island at a bar called Willie's. The place was packed with hundreds of people when shots rang out. The crowd scrambled for cover. Some ran to nearby businesses and homes.
Fox's Jill Nato. America's listening to Fox News.
Good morning. It is 53 degrees in Chicago on AM 560. The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. An Argentina-Puerto Rico soccer match that was supposed to be played here in Chicago has been relocated amid federal immigration enforcement here in the city. Fox's Jeff Manasso has the details.
A friendly soccer match between Argentina and Puerto Rico set for next week will now be played in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, after organizers say the match here in Chicago was canceled due to low ticket sales, of fears of ICE agents being there, and violent protests surrounding ICE action in and around Chicago that's drawn the presence of the National Guard.
President Trump's taking care of business because the Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson don't seem to want to.
That's Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino. Democrats say the immigration and crime crackdowns are illegal and unconstitutional, though so far more than 1,000 arrests of illegal immigrants have been made here. In Chicago, Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
American marathon runner Connor Mance may have placed 4th overall in yesterday's Chicago Marathon, but he shattered an American record for the race. Mance finished the race with a time of 2 hours, 4 minutes, 43 seconds, which smashes an American record that has stood for more than 2 decades. And Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle has unveiled a proposed $10 billion budget recommendation for fiscal year 2026. Preckwinkle said the budget does not include layoffs, tax increases, or cuts to essential services. Cook County's budget increased from $5.2 billion in fiscal year 2018 to $9.94 billion for 2025. News is a service of Goldilocks, offering Chicagoland state-of-the-art smart security systems to protect your home or business. AM 560 listeners receive 3 months of monitoring free with new installs. Get peace of mind by calling Goldilocks at 708-889-5600. Again, that's 708-889-5600. A check of the roads is coming up in 2 minutes, but time now for the AM 560 Business Beat, a service of Signature Bank.
I'm Charles Payne, and this is the Fox Business Report.
Investors are hoping for a major rebound today after stocks took a nosedive Friday. On Sunday, President Trump hinted on Truth Social the possibility of easing trade tensions with China. TSMC is forecasted to have a stunning third quarter. Analysts expect profits from the world's largest manufacturer of advanced AI chips to soar 28% thanks to AI demand. That number, though, could be impacted by U.S. tariffs. Jefferies Financial Group says it expects limited fallout from its investment in First Brands, the auto parts maker filing for bankruptcy last month. StubHub shares climbing before the open after at least 3 brokerages, including JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Citizens, initiate coverage on the stock. JP Morgan identifying StubHub as the leader by far in the secondary ticketing market. And that's your Fox Business Report. I'm Laura Cantor, invested in you.
Scott Jennings isn't seeing anything new from the Democrats.
Democrats for years, 4 years, have called for illegal aliens to receive free health care from the government. No one really disputes that is the Democratic official position. It is the major tenet of their party's healthcare platform.
The Scott Jennings Show. Weekdays at 1, right before Hugh Hewitt at 2 on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey, I'm Brant, and her name is Sherry.
Hello.
She's a friend of mine whom we were just praying for because of a surgery she just went through.
Yes, and I am very happy about something you actually talk about all the time, which is
Medi-Share.
That is right.
Yeah. So what was your experience like with Medi-Share and the healthcare bills?
Honestly, Brant, seamless. And what a blessing that is when you're already nervous about a health issue, which I was.
Yeah.
Members shared my expenses. There were zero problems. And let me tell you, having people pray with you when you call in with your need, that is just...
It is refreshing.
Yes, that's what it is.
What I keep telling people. People love Medi-Share, and they love saving tons of money, too. The typical family can save $500 a month.
I am very thankful for Medi-Share. It is so different, and I mean different in a very, very good way.
It is good different. Call now. They're easy to talk to, and you can get a price within 2 minutes. Call 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE. 833-34-BIBLE.
It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock is here with tips to help protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication on your accounts, report phishing, and update your software on all your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, LifeLock is your best choice. LifeLock not only alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal information, but also fixes identity theft, guaranteed, or your money back. So stay smart, stay safe, and stay protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use the promo code BECK. Terms do apply.
He's coming. Here he goes. Surprise! Your table saw broke. Also, the warranty expired weeks ago, so you need to pay for a new one out of pocket.
At Progressive, we know small business owners don't usually like surprises because they cost you money. But a good surprise that could save you money? Getting a commercial auto quote from Progressive.
Oh, and the replacement part you ordered doesn't fit, so it's completely useless. What a waste.
Surprise yourself. See if you can save in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
If you're looking to purchase a loved one's home after they passed away, you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Pam wanted to purchase her grandmother's $400,000 home after she passed away, which was left to Pam's father, Ted, and her Aunt Betty. Ted listens to my show and wanted to forego his half of the equity of his mom's home and sell Pam the home for $200,000. Bad move. I recommended Pam purchase the home for $400,000 and get a gift of equity from her father, Ted, for $200,000, which enabled Pam to purchase the home with a lower rate and no money out of her pocket. Let's review. I helped Pam purchase her grandmother's home without having to bring a penny to the closing and secure a lower rate. Team Hochberg's helped thousands of radio listeners, but we can't help if you don't call 855-563-2843 or visit 56david.com. That's 855-563-2843 or visit 56david.com. Lower.com, equal housing lender, MLS 112-4061.
Hi, I'm Ken Mariotti, owner of Woodland Windows and Doors, a third-generation family-owned business since 1969. We know you're bombarded by choices when shopping for new windows or doors, so we're inviting you to experience the Woodland difference. For decades, we have been transforming living spaces with Marvin Windows, a fifth-generation family business. Marvin replacement windows have been known to increase the warmth of your cold rooms by 10 degrees. Think about that, 10 degrees warmer. When you welcome Woodland into your home, you will get a product expert to transform your living spaces, full-time, dedicated professional installers that you can trust in your home, along with the best products like Marvin. These are the reasons we're proud of our 5-star reviews and family legacy. No gimmicks, no pressure, and upfront pricing are why Woodland Windows and Doors is your trusted window and door expert in Chicagoland. Visit woodlandwindows.com to book your free in-home expert consultation. That's woodlandwindows.com or stop by our showroom at the corner of Lake and Geary in Roselle.
You've heard me talk about Northridge for years, but now I want you to hear from one of their recent graduates, TJ Gorman, who just graduated second in his class in Marine Corps basic training. This is what he said. I was blessed to attend Northridge not only for the education, but for the values and principles my mentors instilled within me. The school taught us what it meant to be a leader and lead through example, hard work, humility, and empathy. I thank God for Northridge. That's what makes Northridge Prep great for young men. The students are called to excellence to become true leaders. And these boys want to go to school each day. They love Northridge because they can be free to learn, to grow, and to be challenged. There's a real spirit of adventure on campus that you've just got to experience for yourself. For nearly 50 years, they've partnered with parents like no other school in the Chicagoland area. Today, in our nation, we need more Northridge graduates to lead the way as men of intellect and character who love God. Guys like TJ Gorman, men who put their values first. Their open house is Sunday, October 19th at 1 p.m. for boys in grades 6 through 12. Register at northridgeprep.org. northridgeprep.org.
Looking for some hope? Listen to Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef on our sister station, AM 1160, Hope for Your Life. Weekday mornings starting at 8.
Taking a look at the roads from the Team Hochberg Traffic Center, I'm Sue Aller. Still in great shape in both directions on the Eden from Lake Cook to Montrose. The Kennedy inbound from O'Hare to the Byrne interchange is 23 minutes. Outbound is 42. The Eisenhower is about 20 minutes in both directions from Wolf to the Old Post Office. Inbound Stevenson from the Tri-State to Lakeshore is 30 minutes. Outbound is 19, and no slowdowns right now on the Dan Ryan both ways from 95th to the Byrne interchange. On the north side in Rogers Park, we are shut down on Damon Avenue southbound from Jarvis Avenue to Rogers Avenue with a structural fire, and the Jane Addams eastbound is slow between Meacham Road and 290 because of slow traffic on the ramp to get onto the inbound Eisenhower. This report is a service of almostfreeteeth.com. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, but now a check of your forecast from the National Weather Service.
Today will bring variable cloudiness with a high of 74. Tonight, expect mostly cloudy skies with a low of 58. Tomorrow will also be mostly cloudy with a high of 69. By Wednesday, we'll see cloudy skies in the morning, giving way to times of sun and clouds in the afternoon with a high of 63. I'm meteorologist Jason Catarina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and I am pleased to talk to our next guest. I've been on his program from time to time, and I've actually had the occasion to play golf with him and his dad. So the fact that he wrote a book about his dad and his life and revealed some things we didn't get into when we played golf was really interesting to me. Not to mention, I mean, it's always timely, but particularly timely because of the focus on autism at the federal level as a public health issue, and the perspective that Leland Vittert has over the last 3 decades plus as he and his family have grappled with his diagnosis. Really interesting. Leland Vittert, of course, is the host of On Balance with Leland Vittert on News Nation, and he's also News Nation's chief Washington anchor. His book, Born Lucky, A Dedicated Father, A Grateful Son, and My Journey with Autism. Leland, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, great introduction. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, it's I know it's funny when we played and your dad and your father-in-law would refer to you as Lucky. I'm like, where does the Lucky nickname come from? And now I know, and so does everybody else. Your book's already a bestseller. But tell us the story.
So Lucky comes from when I was born. I was very lucky to be alive. Had I been born naturally, I would have been dead. So my mom made a fateful decision to take her doctor's advice and have a C-section as I was being born. My parents are in the delivery room, and they have that blue sheet up between my mom's head and my dad's back there holding her hand. And she is there, and the doctors are delivering me, and the doctor goes, "Oh my God, this is a lucky baby. Oh my God." And my mom's hand, of course, like clenches down on my dad's, and they're terrified. They're new parents at 35 years old. And the nurse says, "This is the luckiest baby we've ever seen." My parents go, "What is going on? Is everything okay? What is happening?" On and on. And The result was the umbilical cord had been tied around my neck and then in 2 knots. So had I been born naturally, I would have been born dead. And that is the beginning of my nickname as Lucky. The doctor put up on the little whiteboard outside my hospital room where it said, Carol Vittert and then Leland Vittert and everything else, just said, call him Lucky. So that was my nickname growing up and still is.
And then, just proceeding into your childhood and an understanding that there were some challenges with your development. I mean, just so how did that proceed?
Yeah, no, I wrote Born Lucky, Dan, to give parents the hope that my parents did not have. So when I was about 5 years old, it was very clear that I was having some issues at school. They were told that they needed to have their son evaluated, which is what no parent wants to hear. So they take me to one of those medical testing centers where you've got, the linoleum floors and the old magazines and stale coffee, whatever. They give me off to the psychologist to go test me, and she brings me back two hours later. They go sit in a conference room, and the woman says, look, it's very difficult to understand what's going on inside Lucky's head right now. And my parents are crushed. Serious behavioral issues. If somebody would touch me in a lunch line, I'd turn around and slug them. Very bad sensory issues, so classic signs of autism that I couldn't deal with certain kinds of socks or jackets or any kind of clothes. I would melt down. And the testing found that I had this enormous disparity in my IQ score. So IQ score is the average of 2 scores. A 20-point spread between the two is a learning disability. I had a 70-point spread. And the woman said to my parents, we've never seen anything like this. I mean, this is pretty wild. And my dad said, what do we do? And the woman says, not much. And my dad goes, is there anything we can do? And she says, generally not. So Born Lucky is the story of how my dad adapted me to the world rather than the world to me. And I think the reason it was a New York Times bestseller in week 1 is because there is so many parents out there looking for hope and looking for proof of the power that parents have and the agency parents have. And that's not what the experts say these days.
That's a 70-point spread. Just to explain that a little bit more for people that have not had an autism diagnosis in their family. It's the difference between sort of like the left brain, right brain, the hard skills, math and science versus English and social reasoning and so forth.
Yeah, they called it like an aptitude and performance. I don't remember the exact terms, but it was this. It's the representative of how sort of balanced you are in your abilities to both comprehend information and then to act upon information, essentially. So I had a 20-point spread between the 2 scores is a learning disability. I had a 70-point spread. But what the story of Born Lucky is how my dad decided I'm not going to give him special accommodations. He's not going to have a bubble wrap around him. He is going to have to learn how to operate in the real world. So there was never any, extra time on tests. There was never anything like that. My EQ, if you could have measured my emotional intelligence, it would have been near freezing. So it was really sort of out there or down there, you might say. But, Dan, as you said, this is something you never knew. My parents never told anybody. They didn't tell me until I was in my 20s. They never told anybody in school, no teachers, no counselors, no therapists, nothing, because my dad thought it was so important that I learned to be in a world where, number one, I wouldn't be defined by a diagnosis, but number 2, I wouldn't use it as an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, so you're a young guy. You're like 43, I think. And so also just the environment in which your parents were operating in. I think a lot of people don't have perspective on what our understanding was just 3 or 4 decades ago about autism, about it being on a spectrum, about Asperger's and things like that. And maybe even though it's more discussed and it's sort of it's more out in the open, still what we don't really appreciate about it.
Yeah, the one thing I'm learning, Dan, in this, sort of 4-week journey so far that we're on since we started talking about the Born Lucky story is how many parents feel so alone. And it's not just autism. It's ADHD, it's anxiety, it's bullying, it's physical disabilities, it's hard times growing up. Born Lucky is a parenting book written by a kid. It doesn't matter what the struggle that the child is going through. This is for every parent of a kid who's having a hard time. And I've heard from parents of kids who had horrible nut allergies and were told they could never even eat with their friends. I've heard from parents of kids who are profoundly autistic, and finally they were trying to push their kids in the way that my dad pushed me to be more and to start swimming. And this one father had gotten his kid to swim 1.5 miles, even though he started at 20 years old just being able to splash in the pool. All of these things of parents showing up and pushing their kids to be more and not accepting the diagnosis as just the limiting factor in someone's life and saying, hey, that's it. And I think it's the reason why Born Lucky is now sold out 3 times on Amazon. We're now back in stock, but we had to print another 70,000 books just because parents are finally hearing about the power that they have, and the Born Lucky story proves that.
Yeah, no, we're talking to Leland Vittert about his book, Born Lucky. Tell us the story about, because I like this, like the parent, your dad, who, by the way, as I mentioned, I met, and just like is such an incredible, understated gentleman. So it's really interesting to get insights on your dad from reading the book as well. But orienting you towards success, like you wanted to play tennis, and he basically said, "Right, you're no good."
Yeah, no. When I wanted to play tennis in 7th grade, my dad watched me play for about an hour. And as you know from playing golf with my dad, he's a pretty good athlete. And he looked at me after an hour and he said, "Look, Lucky, I'll pay for tennis lessons. I'll come watch you play tennis. You are never going to be able to play tennis." Which was heartbreaking in 2 senses for me, because number one, I really wanted to play tennis, and number two, there was a girl I liked who I wanted to play tennis with. So that ruined my life for a few weeks. But it was brutal honesty that my dad brought. And I think, Dan, what you're getting at was Dad realized when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I wasn't going to be good at school because of the learning disabilities. I was not going to have friends because of the social issues, and I wasn't going to be good at athletics because of various physical issues I had. So he had to find ways to help me earn self-esteem. So to him, self-esteem is earned, not given. So it started off with doing 200 push-ups a day, 5 days a week for a few months, and then I would get some kind of reward. But the idea was to teach me over time that self-esteem is earned. And that, combined with, as you mentioned, the brutal honesty of telling me, hey, you're never going to be able to play tennis, was how he began to help me have pride and have self-esteem in a way that most kids would naturally, because of friends or doing well in school or athletics or any of those other things.
And then, thinking about beyond your school years and getting into what you wanted to do for a living, how did you get attracted to not just journalism, but TV journalism specifically? If for people who don't know, you were a Fox News correspondent before you had this show on News Nation.
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan. And show you in Born Lucky how important goal setting was for my dad, starting from when I was 5 or 6 years old of doing push-ups through learning to fly, and then through rowing, and then finally through a career of setting goals that were hard to achieve, and then focusing on them, working hard, and going out and achieving them. So I got an internship, started in radio in St. Louis, and then ended up in television in St. Louis as an intern. And somebody said to me, "Hey, kid, you kind of are pretty good at this. You might make it to the network someday," which this is 2000. So, the Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaws were still sort of gods of television at that time. And I Googled, what's the youngest anyone's ever made it to the network, become a network correspondent? And the answer was about 30. So I decided, well, that's what I want to do. I'm going to try to get there by 30, which as a 20-year-old provided this just very long road, but very clear path to get to being a network correspondent. Turned out to be a foreign correspondent in Israel. But that was sort of all going back to what Dad taught from the very beginning, which is how to set goals and then work tirelessly to go achieve them.
And just as you go from school into your professional life as a journalist, like just going back to that chasm between, on your IQ test or whatever you want to call it. And so where you were deficient, how did you sort of evolve and progress in areas where you were deficient as you're an on-air reporter and now an on-air host? Just people, for people that have a similar deficiency growing up, how does that gap close to where you can do the things that you do now?
Well, Dan, I think if you ask my wife, there's been many deficiencies that have not closed.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but it's a great question. Look, a lot of the issues that I've had in terms of spelling and reading comprehension and on and on and on, I've never sort of, gotten better from it. I still couldn't learn a foreign language to save my life. What Dad taught me from the very beginning, when I was 5 and 6, really the most deficient part I was at was my social interaction that comes so naturally to somebody like you and to most people, the social and emotional fabric of American and of just the human equation in human life. So in Born Lucky, we take you through how, starting when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I didn't have any friends, so he couldn't do it with kids, but he would take me out to lunch with his friends. And I would have loved to go to lunch with Mr. Prof because Mr. Prof, was involved in the media. And I love talking about current events and I love talking about politics and business and news. So before, we'd be sitting down and you'd be talking with my dad about, golf or whatever. And I would just start bugging you incessantly about how do you pick the topics for your radio show and how long do you get for each segment and how do you come up with your questions and how much do you sell your ads for, on and on and on. And Dad would tap his watch. And that was my signal, number one, to stop talking, but not without being sort of called out or embarrassed by my dad. And then number two, it was to bookmark it. So we would then go back after lunch and post game. And Dad would be, okay, so when Mr. Prof was talking about his golf game, why did you interrupt and ask about J.B. Pritzker? I said, well, I don't know, Dad. I thought it was interesting. He says, right, but what do you think Mr. Prof thought was interesting? So it was trying to teach me that social interaction and that emotional give and take that I was completely blind to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really cool. So the way to compensate for this particular challenge, that's And by the way, just in terms of like social interaction coming easy to people like me, I think if you talk to people who know me, you'll get the sense that I have a very low emotional IQ score as well. So, don't feel bad about that.
It's why we get along.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, very good. Leland Vittert is, of course, News Nation's chief Washington anchor. He's the host of On Balance with Leland Vittert, the book, bestseller already, and you just heard why. Born Lucky, a dedicated father, a grateful son, and my journey with autism. Leland, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book. Give my regards to your family as well. Pleasure to talk to you.
I will, Dan. Thanks so much.
And Leland joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Hello?
Sir, this is Officer Peterson. There's been a string of break-ins in the area, and your office, it was hit.
Hit? What do you mean? We were robbed?
Looks like the back door lock was easily pried open, and they moved through the building like they knew exactly what to take. We see wires everywhere. No computers.
What? No computers? I just upgraded everything.
Looks like they moved fast. We only found out because a neighboring business had their alarm go off. Do you have any security cameras?
No, nothing.
Don't wait until it's too late.
Goldilocks protects Chicagoland businesses with custom security solutions. From reinforced commercial doors with keyless entry to cameras and 24/7 monitoring that alerts authorities immediately. Schedule a free on-site assessment at GoldilocksInc.com. Again, that's GoldilocksInc.com. Plus, AM 560 listeners get their first 3 months of monitoring free with a new install. Call 708-889-5600. That's 708-889-5600. Goldilocks, Chicago's premier locksmith, doors, and security systems company since 1981.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank, a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Bob Chavato, owner of Go Exceed and a customer of Signature Bank. By leveraging AI and machine learning, we provide data management solutions for corporations to save time and money managing their cellular devices. While we rely on machines to help us run our business, we believe personal relationships are essential. This is why we chose Signature Bank. Having a banking partner who understands our background, our business, and our priorities is fundamental to our success. Any bank can provide basic services, but having a bank that you can trust, one that looks out for you and treats your business like its own, that's irreplaceable.
Signature Bank helps local businesses succeed. Want to learn how Signature Bank can help turn your business vision into reality? Call Signature Bank at 773-467-5600 or visit signaturebank.bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
It's news, opinion, and insight at the speed of your life. Streaming at 560theanswer.com on the AM 560 mobile app, or tell your smart speaker to play The Answer Chicago.
Good morning. It's 53 degrees in Chicago on AM 560 The Answer. I'm Stace Keene in the AM 560 newsroom. President Trump says he may consider using the Insurrection Act as federal judges continue to block his efforts to send troops to major U.S. cities, including here in Chicago. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons was on Fox's The Big Weekend Show, and he notes that too many times he's called out to local agencies only for them not to respond.
Luckily, under this administration, we have that whole of government approach where we do have the ATF, DEA, the FBI that are out there with their special response teams, as well as our special response teams and our SWAT teams handling the situation. But until we really get the support of the state and locals, that's really key in this situation.
Now, this comes after a recent ruling from a federal judge that's put a hold on the president's deployment of the National Guard right here in Chicago shortly after troops arrived. And the city of Lake Forest has lifted a boil water order following a water main break on Friday. Officials say lab tests came back yesterday showing the water now meets all public health standards and is safe to drink. This news update is delivered to you by Quick Delivery Service. Visit quickdelivery.com when you need same-day delivery. Local delivery when you need it from safe, licensed professionals. Go to quickdelivery.com now to schedule your delivery. A check of the roads is coming up in 2 minutes on AM 560, The Answer.
Get your tickets for Freedom Summit Chicago 2025, happening on Saturday, November 8th at Westin Chicago Northwest in Itasca. This year, featuring Dr. Ben Carson, Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, along with Dan Proft, Sean Thompson, John Anthony, and many more. This event will sell out fast, so get your tickets today at freedomsummitchicago.com. That's freedomsummitchicago.com. Sponsored in part by Nauman and Associates, Scott Tucker Solutions Incorporated, and by Catholic Cemeteries of Chicago.
When the power goes out, life stops. Heat, AC, fridge, phones, all gone. But with a Generac home standby generator from True Power Generator Service, your home powers back on automatically, so you're never left in the dark. Book your consultation today at truepowergenerator.com. That's TRUpowergenerator.com. Plus, 560 listeners get a free 10-year extended warranty. Terms and conditions apply. Call for details. True Power Generator Service and Generac. It's not just a generator, it's a power move.
Are you tired of tech headaches slowing your business down? Unique Computing Solutions has been the go-to IT team for businesses in Illinois and Northwest Indiana for nearly 30 years. Your systems should be running smoothly, your data secured, and your communications streamlined. Visit our website today at uniquecomputingsolutions.com. That's uniquecomputingsolutions.com. Your IT challenges solved.
The Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
This is an important thing to recognize about Trump is he's a very transactional guy. Trump will impose a penalty, and if you come to him and say, well, let's make a deal. This is the actual opposite of socialism. This is called cutting a deal to make something work. And I think that's all that goes through Trump's mind.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or at SalemPodcastNetwork.com.
Hey, I'm Steve Wyatt, and I want to invite you to the Wyatt Matters Show, which airs every Sunday on this station. You can expect lively discussion and heartfelt reflection that will both entertain and inspire you. And if we do it right, maybe deliver some genuine laughter as well. We talk about not only what matters, but also why it matters.
Wyatt Matters. Sunday morning at 6 on AM 560. The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by The Real Story with Jeannie Ives, powered by Breakthrough Ideas. Sunday evening at 7 on AM 560, The Answer.
Sean Thompson here, and I'm with attorney Bert Hochberg from the law firm of Schiller, Ducanto, and Fleck. We're talking about divorce arbitration. This is not really a new, or is it a new, innovative way to go through divorce?
Arbitration has been around for decades. It's completely legit and available to resolve divorce cases. The litigants and their lawyers sign an arbitration agreement. They identify what the issues are, and we set up dates, and we determine what experts and witnesses there may be. Arbitration is a hearing, a trial that is intended to finish a case efficiently with limited appeal, with a binding decision, and it's confidential, so it has some great characteristics.
I think it's a unique alternative to divorce. For more information, please visit sdflaw.com and type Bert Hochberg into the search box. That's sdflaw.com or call direct 773-255-6150.
Taking a look at the roads from the Team Hochberg Traffic Center, I'm Sue Aller. Inbound on the Eden from Lake Cook to Montrose is 16, outbound is 14. The Kennedy inbound from O'Hare to the Byrne Interchange is 23 minutes, outbound is 32. The Eisenhower inbound from Wolf to the Old Post Office is 16 minutes, outbound 17. Inbound Stevenson from the Tri-State to Lakeshore is 18, outbound is 19. And looking good both ways on the Dan Ryan from 95th to the Byrne Interchange. On the north side in Rogers Park, Damon Avenue is closed with a structural fire southbound from Jarvis Avenue to Rogers Avenue, and the northbound Tri-State slows down as you approach the Eisenhower. This report is sponsored by Macy's Backstage. Macy's Backstage is a whole department inside your Macy's store where you can find the latest fall looks all for under $30. With new arrivals every day, you never know what amazing deals you'll find. Don't wait. Find a location at Macy'sBackstage.com. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, but now a check of your forecast from the National Weather Service.
Today will be partly sunny and pleasant with a high of 70. Tonight, expect partly cloudy skies with a low of 55. Tomorrow will bring a mix of sun and clouds, creating pleasant conditions with a high of 73. Tuesday looks mostly cloudy with a high of 68. Wednesday starts off cloudy, but will transition to a mix of sun and clouds in the afternoon, reaching a high of 60. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. J.D. Vance, he's the vice president, don't you know? I'm not sure what he does. Is that maybe just for sport more than anything else? But he went on with Clinton Foundation Donor Zero, that would be George Stephanopoulos, on This Week, to get peppered about the Letitia James indictment for mortgage and bank fraud. And, of course, Stephanopoulos tried to do the old whataboutism game, and it went a little something like this.
Let me also ask you, as we saw the indictment this week of Letitia James on questions of mortgage fraud, also Lisa Cook has been accused by the Trump administration of committing mortgage fraud as well. The journalism outlet ProPublica has actually published a story, and I want to show it up on the screen right now, that says that several members of the Trump administration have faced similar questions. Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer entered into 2 primary residence mortgages in quick succession. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has primary residence mortgages in New Jersey and Washington, D.C. Lee Zeldin, the Environmental Protection Agency administrator, has 1 primary residence mortgage in Long Island and another in Washington, D.C. How do you respond to critics who say that the Trump administration is engaging in a double standard here?
Well, I'd say two things, George. First of all, ProPublica is basically a left-wing blog. I'm not shocked that you found a left-wing blog that can attack members of the Trump administration. But second, and this is the most important, is what does the law say? Letitia James was indicted in a left-leaning part of our country, a part that voted very heavily against Donald J. Trump for the crime of mortgage fraud. When I read the indictment, when I read the facts in the case, I see a person who committed mortgage fraud. Now, of course, the jury is going to decide whether she ultimately committed a crime. We don't try her. The administration doesn't try her. A judge tries the case, and a jury decides whether she's ultimately guilty. That is what is going to determine whether she goes to prison. I think we let the facts drive this. And, George, that's what we've tried to do in the administration's Department of Justice. We've asked ourselves, has a person violated the law? And if that person has violated the law, then we decide to prosecute him. That's what the Department of Justice should do. It didn't do that under Joe Biden's administration. It does under Donald Trump's.
On the facts, do you dispute the facts that ProPublica reported?
Do I dispute a far-left blog that I haven't read that you brought up in this interview? I have no idea, George. I have no idea what they actually said. But I certainly question the source. I question their credibility. And most importantly, I'm not worried about what they said about members of our administration. I ask the question, what does the law say? And if the law says that you engage in mortgage fraud and a local prosecutor, a local grand jury, and finally a jury convicts you of that crime, then that is how the justice system is meant to work in the United States of America.
Yeah, the old prosecutorial discretion. He's right to call ProPublica a left-wing blog, too. It's not some sort of, independent-minded news outlet that, of course, Stephanopoulos tried to present it as. But Letitia James put a target on her back, just like Tim Comey did and others. Said, come and get me. Come and get me. No one is above the law, a lot of moralizing, a lot of self-righteousness. And so you put a target on your back and you grab the attention of prosecutors to pour over your conduct, and they find something in which you violated the law. Well, you're the one who chose to make a spectacle of yourself and challenge anybody and everybody to look at you. Okay, well, that happened, and this is what they found. And for those who are a little queasy about lawfare and this, sort of being perceived as score settling and where this might lead, the precedent being set that retribution will be visited from term to term on those who were of the opposition party. Well, what choice does Trump have? Do federal prosecutors have? Because here's what Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, had to say about the matter over the weekend.
So there's two things to keep in mind here. First of all, there's accountability for the corruption and the chaos that Donald Trump has unleashed on the American people from the very beginning of his presidency on January 20th that should be tied directly to the Supreme Court and the 6 right-wing justices who basically gave Donald Trump, without justification, blanket immunity. And he's been out of control ever since. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, of course, is the fact that there are so many different corrupt sycophants within the Trump administration, including but not limited to within the Department of Justice. Now, these people don't have immunity. And the reality is the statute of limitations is 5 years, and there will be accountability with the next administration, if not before, when Democrats take back control of the House of Representatives.
So let me just translate that for you. We'll impeach who we can impeach, and we'll prosecute who we can prosecute. So the lawfare will continue regardless of what Trump or federal prosecutors appointed by Trump do around the country. So what is Trump administration to do? Unilaterally disarm? More on the topic. We're pleased to be joined by Professor William Jacobson. He is a clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
So your reaction to the Letitia James indictment and, of course, the larger lawfare context?
There are multiple levels of irony there. because Letitia James ran for office. It's on video. Ran for office to be Attorney General of the state of New York, to get hold of a massive, massive Attorney General bureaucracy. And she said she was doing it to get Donald Trump. She even ran an ad, which we've posted many times, where she says the days of Donald Trump are coming to an end. Soon after she was elected, she also announced that she would use her office, this is on video, not only to get Donald Trump, but to get his family. So Letitia James, of all people, has weaponized the prosecutorial function for political purposes to get a political opponent. She will ultimately be judged on whether she committed mortgage fraud or not. Certainly the facts in the indictment seem to indicate that, but an indictment doesn't give the other side of the story, doesn't give the defense. But she is the last person in the world who should be complaining about politicization of the prosecutorial function, because she is Exhibit A as to what Democrats did. She investigated Trump, and she could not find a crime to prosecute against him. So she brought the civil case, the so-called mortgage fraud case, banking fraud case against Donald Trump. Something, while it's not identical to what she charged him with, has to do with obtaining more favorable loans based on false valuations, allegedly false valuations. And so she sought to cripple, and came very close to it until an appeals court threw out the monetary verdict. She sought to cripple the entire Trump organization, family members, everybody, on a flimsy theory that because Trump valued properties above what the assessed value for tax purposes was, that was somehow fraud, even though there were sophisticated banks on the other side who, of course, do their own valuation. So Letitia James politicized her prosecutorial office. She did it to get a specific person. She came up with a novel theory to prosecute him for getting loans on a more favorable basis. She is the last person who should be complaining.
Well, the other thing, too, is, in terms of the party, the larger party complaining, because this is political, there's nobody that, even in retrospect, said, you know what, Letitia James or Alvin Bragg took it too far. You've got politicians, including our very own governor here in Illinois, still trotting out the tired, 34-time convicted felon line of caricature in the direction of Donald Trump. So they're completely unapologetic about what was visited upon Trump and his family business. And even if you didn't get Hakeem Jeffries saying basically, as soon as you let us back into power, as soon as we have the levers of power again, we're going to do it all over again, which is what he basically said. Well, what are Republicans, not just Trump and not just this administration, but what are Republicans to do? I don't know. I don't want to go down this path, but I don't know how you prevent going down this path unless you inflict enough punishment on the other side that there is agreement to return to the rule of law, as opposed to using the law to punish your political opponents, in a given election cycle.
In a better world, nobody would be doing this, but we don't live in a better world. We live in a world where the federal and state prosecutorial bureaucracies were completely weaponized against Donald Trump. You mentioned the criminal case in New York because Letitia James couldn't find a crime that she could prosecute. So the local DA, Alvin Bragg, supported by George Soros's foundations, brought a novel legal theory to convert misdemeanor bookkeeping offenses, alleged misdemeanor bookkeeping offenses, into a felony so that they could bring the case against Donald Trump using legal theories that had never been used in that way before. It resulted in a conviction in a New York City court, surprise, surprise, but it never got ruled on appeal because as soon as he became elected president, the judge stayed everything and said because he can't be prosecuted as president now. So we never got a final legal determination there, but it was a novel theory never used against anybody else to turn misdemeanor bookkeeping, alleged misdemeanor bookkeeping offenses into a felony. So of all the people, the Democrats have been doing this. And of course, they did it at the federal level with Trump. The lawsuit, the criminal prosecution related to the records found at Mar-a-Lago was ultimately thrown out by a district judge. And the D.C. case never got to trial. So the feds went after him. And let's not, of course, forget Fani Willis, the disgraced Fani Willis, the local prosecutor in Georgia, who jumped on the bandwagon to use her office to get Trump. So the Democrats created this situation. I wish they hadn't done it, and I wish they could stand here and say, oh, Republicans shouldn't do that because that's not right. Well, I'm sorry. It's too late for the Democrats to say that. And the main perpetrator, the worst perpetrator of all, Letitia James, who abused her office for political purposes, is now going to be held to account. And she's not going to be held to account for political reasons. She's being held to account because she put herself in the spotlight. And others, it wasn't even the Trump administration, others have been pounding the table for a couple of years about Letitia James and this mortgage fraud. And so it finally came to the attention of prosecutors, and they prosecuted it. And so I'm sorry, I just don't feel bad. I wish we were in a different place. And maybe now Democrats will get it through their heads not to do this, although they're promising to do it again anyway.
I wanted to get your legal opinion on another matter. Of course, the deployment of the military in American cities, is being characterized as an invasion, and Trump is declaring war on cities like Chicago and its residents, attacking its residents. I mean, the incendiary rhetoric that accompanies every political position the left takes. But in point of fact, as per usual, Trump is fighting it out in the courts. And in Chicago, there was a celebratory initial celebration over a temporary stay in terms of deployment. But that has been overturned by the appellate court in terms of the president has the right to control the Illinois National Guard, has the right to use the National Guard in protection of federal installations and federal law enforcement officers. If this, because of what's going on in Memphis and Chicago, in Portland, if this gets to the Supreme Court, what ultimately would be established as the presidential powers here, do you think?
I think that Trump's use of the National Guard, first of all, to protect federal enforcement of the immigration law will be upheld. I think that's very clear. He has the power to protect ICE agents and other federal immigration agents in the course of carrying out their duties. And what's happening in Chicago, and it's happening in Oregon, and it's happening in Los Angeles, and it's happening in many places, is local officials are acting in concert with protesters and rioters who are seeking to prevent the enforcement of the immigration laws. That's an easy win for Trump, I believe, in the Supreme Court. What's going to be closer, but I think he will ultimately prevail, is if he can use the National Guard for broader purposes than merely protecting ICE agents from attack. And I think he's going to win there also. I think ultimately the Supreme Court's going to say the decision as to whether the conditions, the rebellion, insurrection, invasion, et cetera, is ultimately up to the president. It's not up to a federal court. And so I think ultimately he's going to prevail on these things. The appeals courts that have ruled on it, the Ninth Circuit, I believe it was, upheld his use of federalizing the California National Guard. And then it's again before the Ninth Circuit and the Seventh Circuit with regard to Illinois. And they issued administrative stays, just holding orders, which said he can nationalize them, but he can't deploy them. So the two courts of appeal on a temporary basis says until we decide this, he can nationalize them, but he can't deploy them. That's I guess, a theoretical distinction. What good is nationalize them if you can't deploy them? But that's
right.
Court of Appeal said to put basically to maintain the status quo until they decide. But I think Trump's going to prevail on these things. And the mayors have no one to blame but themselves because they're not using the local police to protect federal enforcement agents. And the federal government's going to step in and do it anyway. And so I think this is ultimately a winner on the legal merits for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose Mark Benioff in San Francisco, you should recognize you're in trouble. Professor William Jacobson is the clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation. Professor Jacobson, thank you always. Appreciate it.
Great. Take care.
And Professor Jacobson joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You need a construction company, but who?
Call Croscom.
A construction company you can trust that shares your Christian and conservative values. For decades, Croscom has been doing work in Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana, and Wisconsin. Roofs, siding, windows, doors, gutters, basically everything for your home or business, even solar. Quality work and professional services that make you feel great about your decision to work with Croscom.
Call Croscom.
630-871-5500. Give them a chance to earn your business. If your repairs are due to storm, fire, or flood damage, you need to
call Croscom.
They're licensed public adjusters. They work for you, not the insurance company. Croscom will work to get you the money you deserve, the maximum payout. They know the insurance companies and how to deal with them. They win for you.
Call Croscom.
Croscom Construction and Public Adjusters.
This is Dan Lights with Croscom. You can trust us with your home or business for high quality work and fair prices. It's the only way we do business.
630-871-5500. CroscomPublicAdjusters.com.
Is your company's cybersecurity ready to handle today's cyber attacks? Some companies never recover due to the fallout. Listen to this. In 2021, a ransomware group called DarkSide gained access to Colonial Pipeline through a compromised password. The impact? 4.4 million paid in ransom. In 2017, Equifax had a massive breach which ended up costing over $700 million in settlements. Large companies from Target, Yahoo, to small businesses, including medical practices, have suffered major losses due to cyber attacks. Many have had to close their doors. Access One is here to protect your business 24/7. Cybersecurity isn't just about IT. It's about protecting your survival and customer trust. If you're concerned about your cybersecurity, get a free baseline cybersecurity assessment from AM560 sponsor Access One. Call 1-800-804-8333 or fill out the contact form at accessoneinc.com. Access One has been protecting Chicago businesses for 3 decades. That's 1-800-804-8333 or accessoneinc.com.
Is cremation an option you're considering for you or your loved one? At Catholic Cemeteries, we offer sacred, permanent places of rest where loved ones can be remembered, prayed for, and visited for generations. Too often, cremated remains are brought home, only to end up in closets, basements, or forgotten on shelves. Memorialization is forever. Honor their life. Preserve your legacy. Visit us today at CatholicCemeteryChicago.org to schedule a free consultation or call 708-236-5490.
If you're looking to purchase a loved one's home after they passed away, you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Pam wanted to purchase her grandmother's $400,000 home after she passed away, which was left to Pam's father, Ted, and her Aunt Betty. Ted listens to my show and wanted to forego his half of the equity of his mom's home and sell Pam the home for $200,000. Bad move. I recommended Pam purchase the home for $400,000 and get a gift of equity from her father, Ted, for $200,000. Which enabled Pam to purchase the home with a lower rate and no money out of her pocket. Let's review. I helped Pam purchase her grandmother's home without having to bring a penny to the closing and secure a lower rate. Team Hochberg's helped thousands of radio listeners, but we can't help if you don't call 855-563-2843 or visit 56david.com. That's 855-563-2843 or visit 56david.com. Lower.com, equal housing lender, MLS 1124. 061.
the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
This is the important thing to recognize about Trump is he's a very transactional guy. Trump will impose a penalty, and if you come to him and say, well, let's make a deal. This is the actual opposite of socialism. This is called cutting a deal to make something work. And I think that's all that goes through Trump's mind.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or at SalemPodcastNetwork.com.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
News, opinion, insight. This is AM 560, The Answer. WIND, Chicago. Streaming at 560theanswer.com on the AM 560 mobile app, or tell your smart speaker to play The Answer Chicago.
This is a Fox News alert. President Trump is about to land in Egypt after celebrating in Israel. I'm Dave Anthony.
The hostages are back. The hostages are back.
Addressing Israel's parliament after Hamas released the last 20 living hostages in the ceasefire he brokered.
Let me also convey my tremendous appreciation for all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free.
And the president will meet with their world leaders and others from around the world at a peace summit in Egypt. As for Palestinians living in Gaza, left in ruins by the war Hamas's terror attack triggered.
This is their chance to turn forever from the path of terror and violence. It's been extreme, to exile the wicked forces of hate that are in their midst, and I think that's going to happen.
As for the freed hostages,
many of them are in hospital around Tel Aviv or on the way to those hospitals by helicopter. Initially, those hostages were under Hamas control. They were transferred from Hamas to members of the International Red Cross and then to Israeli Defense Forces.
Fox's Steve Harrigan also reports from Jerusalem.
Some disappointment when it comes to hostages not alive. Only 4 bodies recovered so far out of 28.
As part of the deal, Israel is also releasing nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. The search for a gunman continues in South Carolina, where a mass shooting early yesterday at a bar on St. Helena Island left 4 people dead, 20 injured. For the 13th day in a row, most of the federal government is closed.
The hurt from the government shutdown intensifies this week. Workers off the job, services suspended, and now many federal employees will miss paychecks. Republicans believe that turns up the pressure on Democrats to cave.
Fox's Ted Pergam at the Capitol, where another Senate vote will be tomorrow. Democrats have refused to agree to a funding bill unless it includes health care provisions. America's listening to Fox News.
Now, your official weather forecast.
Today will be partly sunny and pleasant with a high of 70. Tonight, expect partly cloudy skies with a low of 55. Tomorrow will bring a mix of sun and clouds, creating pleasant conditions with a high of 73. Tuesday looks mostly cloudy with a high of 68. Wednesday starts off cloudy, but will transition to a mix of sun and clouds in the afternoon, reaching a high of 60.